My Infamous Life, the autobiography of Mobb Deep's Prodigy, by Albert Prodigy Johnson, with Laura Checkaway. Read by Prodigy. I dedicate this book to my entire family tree. Kiki, Kizana, Shaka, and Fantasia, I love you. Introduction. June 28th, 2008, Mid-State Correctional Facility, Marcy, New York, 2:30 p.m. Sitting alone at my table in the visiting room, I had to wait until 3 p.m. when visiting hours were over before I could get back to my dorm. I wished I could have gotten up and walked out the prison with Alchemist when he had left, but I had more than 2 years to spend in that 8x10 box before I would be a free man again. This was the second time my friend and producer Alchemist had taken the 4-hour ride up from Manhattan to visit me. He looked good, healthy and focused. The visiting room was packed, around 60 other inmates, their families and friends. During our visit, a few inmates shouted, "Yo, Mobb Deep, what up, Alchemist? What up, Prodigy?" I told Al how the inmates and the correctional officers had been showing me love and asking for autographs. But after Al left, I sat there, observing everyone around me, and I was reminded that I was just another inmate just like everybody else. Then number 08A1481. My department identification number represents the year which I got locked up. 08. The facility code, A, for downstate, the prison I was initially in. And then 1481 indicates that I was the 1,481st inmate to get locked up in the prison that year. We were all the same while stuck inside. Even though I didn't want to be in this prison, I deserved to be here. I would hear inmates complain and bitch all day and night about how uncomfortable they were, how unfair the rules and the officers were, and how stressful being locked up was. Stop crying, do your time, I say to myself. I've done plenty of damage in my days. I've done some wicked, evil, terrible things to people in my past. Shit. The 3.5 years I got was just a slap on the wrist when I think back on all the things I've gotten away with. So I just accepted my circumstances and made the best out of it. Put my time to good use. Prison has given me the time to reflect, look deep inside, realize where I've been, where I am, and where I'm going. I used to be cold and emotionless. I believe the disease I was born with, sickle cell anemia, made me that way. Factor in my environment and the people I surrounded myself with, and yeah, you got the makings of a sinful person. I'm different now, only 'cause I choose to be. I know now that good is the correct way to be. I've been straddling the fence for a number of years, thinking it was okay to do a little bit of evil if I was doing a lot of good. But life doesn't work like that. You have to choose a side. My mind, body, and soul are in excellent condition now. I've never felt so invigorated. I've been in the music industry since I was 16 years old, touring the world, selling millions of albums, groupies, drugs, alcohol, sex, radio, TV, magazines, video, money, jewelry, cars, fashion, rap verses, beats, and studios at my disposal non-stop for 17 years straight. Non-stop. 17 years. Do the math. I came to prison when I turned 33. The truth is, I never took the time to stop and mature mentally until now. To step outside my little fast-paced world and see what needed to be adjusted. It's like I was suspended in time. Like I was 16 years old for 17 years. I never grew up. You follow what I'm saying? I am a man now. My hard-headed ass took the long, rocky road to get to this point, but at least I finally made it. Chapter 1. Genesis. Here's a brief family history, because these are the pieces of my puzzle that are most important. Both of my grandparents on my pop's side were half black, half Cherokee Indian from the dirty South. Grandpops from Dallas, Texas, and grandmoms from Richmond, Virginia. Bud and Bernice Johnson were big time in their day. Grandmoms who had a rare combination of dark brown skin, very soft, straight hair, was one of the first Cotton Club dancers at the world-famous nightclub in Harlem. Singer-actress Lena Horne, who also danced at the Cotton Club before her rise to fame, was one of her close friends coming up. In order to be a black person inside that club, your complexion had to be lighted in a brown paper bag, or you had to be part of the entertainment or the help. And that's where my grandparents met. My grandmother told me that my grandfather, who played in the club's band every night, wanted her to stop dancing there. But I don't think she stopped until she was ready. Grandpops was a world-famous jazz musician, now in the big band and Jazz Hall of Fame, who played the saxophone and clarinet and was friends with the major jazz players of that time, Billy Eckstine, Dizzy Gillespie, Gary Bartz, and Frank Foster would come over to the crib and chill. My grandfather wrote his own sheet music and released many albums. He helped teach Quincy Jones to read and write music and toured the world as a member of one of Quincy's first big bands. On weekends as a kid, late at night, Grandpops, or Big Bud, as they called him, would sit me on his lap and try to teach me all these funny-looking music notes while he puffed away on his tobacco pipe. It was a foreign language to me, and I was just too young. Soon after the Cotton Club gig, Grandmoms opened up her own dance school in Jamaica, Queens, the Bernice Johnson Dance School. She started the business in the basement of her house with only a handful of students, but grew so big that she became the first black woman to own a building on Merrick Boulevard and dubbed herself the HNIC, head nigga in charge. In the 70s and 80s, movies like Saturday Night Fever, Fame, Flashdance, Beat Street, and Footloose, plus the Michael Jackson and breakdancing and rap music craze, made people really want to dance. Her school was a huge success. But don't let the good fortune, showbiz, and spotlights fool you. My grandparents and parents came up during the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, during major segregation, racism, lynching, and pure hatred for black people. When they gave birth to my father, Bud Johnson Jr., they were very well off money-wise. So growing up, my pops was known as the rich kid in South Jamaica. He got into a lot of fights to prove himself in the streets. Extra wild shit to show people he wasn't no punk. This was my pop's side of the family. Mom's side was different. On my mom's side, my great-great-great-grandpops, William Jefferson White, and great-great-great-grandmoms, Josephine White, were 5% black and 95% Irish. Her entire side of the family could pass for Caucasian. Great-great-great-grandpops wasn't a joke. He was a minister who founded and built Morehouse College in the basement of his Baptist church in Augusta, Georgia, in 1867. When I found that out, I had to pick my jaw from off the floor. So many famous black men graduated from Morehouse, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Samuel L. Jackson, even Spike Lee. William's grandson, my great-grandfather, William J. Shaw, was the secretary of the Republican Central Committee of Georgia from 1926 to 1961, the only black member to hold that political position in Georgia at that time. In 1950, he established the first post office for blacks in Atlanta. Black people had to travel way outside of Atlanta for postal service before that. Finding out about my family tree blew my mind. At first, I was disgusted that I had white blood in me. All I could think about was some white slave master raping my black ancestors. But then I just learned to accept it. My father, Bud Johnson Jr., was born September 14th, 1942, and was raised in my grandparents' Jamaica, Queens house, right behind God Brewer Boulevard. My mom's, Fatima Frances Johnson, was born July 29th, 1944, and raised in Harlem until age 6, when her family moved to South Jamaica Projects right next to my pops. Her mother's name was Bernie Johnson, similar to my pop's mother, Bernice Johnson. Moms and Pops met at my grandmom's dance school. Pops was 11, and he loved playing the drums. My mom's was 9, a girl with a sweetheart who loved to sing and dance. She took every class there was. Their puppy love was short-lived. Pops thought he was a player, and Moms left him when she found out he had a handful of girlfriends. At 15, Pops was in a doo-wop group called the Chanters. They had a couple of lukewarm records. Mom's career, on the other hand, must have had Pops wishing he never messed up with her. In 1962, 6 years after my pop's short run in the music biz, Moms was asked to join a group called the Crystals. Moms was a dime, a 19-year-old light-skinned sister with hazel green eyes who happened to be in the right place at the right time. She had a young son, my older brother, Greg. We have different fathers. And she left him with family so she could hit the road. Moms was big time. The Crystals had a bunch of hit records, including He's a Rebel, The Do Run Run, and Then He Kissed Me, Uptown, and There's No Other Like My Baby. They went on world tours with Diana Ross and the Supremes, Dick Clark, and the like. At one point, she was engaged to Charlie Thomas from the Drifters, but that ain't last. That was just some on the road too long and feeling lonely thing. After being on tour for 3 years straight, Moms and Pops got back together soon after she came back to New York. I guess he really loved her, but he was a wild boy. I know that she loved him. They finally stopped bullshitting and they got married. Now, I was born on November 2nd, 1974, at approximately 9:32 p.m. at Nassau County Medical Center in Hempstead, Long Island. By the time I popped out, Hempstead had become almost all black because of what's called white flight. That means that black people started buying property in white neighborhoods and the whites moved out. My grandmother owned 2 houses at that time, one in Hempstead and another in Lakeview, the next town over. Moms, Pops, my brother Greg, and I moved into my grandmom's crib in Lakeview. At less than 1 year old, I was admitted to the hospital for the first time. Bright lights, doctors poking, stabbing, pushing, pulling all over my pain. My mother, my father, relatives' faces bending down, looking at me. Wires connected to my arm with bags full of fluid dripping. All these foggy memories, I guess the trauma I went through forced me to remember. I wanted to crawl back in my mother's stomach the same way I came out, back to the warm, dark place where I was safe. Who said I wanted to come out anyway? I was fine where I was at. But the witch and wizard doctors cut my mother open and pulled me out like they were conducting some twisted ritual and forced me to take part in this crazy world. There was nothing I could do but be confused and wait. I was diagnosed with sickle cell anemia, SS type, the worst form of sickle cell there is, a painful, hereditary blood disorder that affects only blacks and Latinos. There was very limited information about sickle cell when my parents were planning to have a child, so they were just as confused as me. When I got out the hospital, my parents brought me to my grandma's dance school in Jamaica, Queens. I went from being a science experiment, screaming in a cold, dark hospital alone, to laughing while doing a baby bounce, to the sound of African drums, stomping feet, girls gyrating their bodies to the beat with hundreds of smiling black faces surrounding me. My father was a master African drummer, and my mom's was a dancer. I'd sit in the stroller on the sidelines, or someone would hold me on their lap for a better view, bopping my head to the beat so intensely that my father called me Bophead. Extreme pain to extreme pleasure has been the story of my entire life. That tremendous joy and pain, then joy and pain again, turned me into one little moody motherfucker. My grandmother's dance business was making a lot of money, and she enrolled me into a private preschool at age 4. During winter, waiting for the school bus in the morning, my ankles would start to ache. I hated cold winter mornings. A sickle cell attack would creep up slowly in my ankles, legs, arms, back, stomach, and chest. Sometimes my lips and tongue turned numb, and I knew I was going into a crisis. Crazy, right? When the bus came, I would walk slowly to avoid the pain bum rushing my whole body while the other kids stared through the bus windows, wondering if I was crazy or retarded. But I learned to stay calm and not be embarrassed. I'd rather move slow and look crazy than take the trip to the emergency room. If I moved my body parts fast, it would agitate my sickle cells and cause my pain to increase. But if I moved slowly, and if I was lucky enough, the pain would remain minimal and sometimes even go away. One chilly autumn morning, after walking extra slow to the bus because my pain was sneaking up, I sat in a seat where the sun was beaming hot. The sun shined in that spot the entire ride. I sat very still, without moving a muscle. 15 minutes later, I got off the bus and the pain was gone. I learned a new trick. The sun's heat actually killed the sickle cells. So every cold morning, I sat in the sun and I would curse Mother Nature on cloudy, rainy days. I was a very serious child who never got to enjoy life to the fullest like a normal, healthy kid because of my sickle cell. All my boys were into sports and physical fitness, but as bad as I wanted to, I couldn't join in because overworking my body would trigger my pain. Sometimes I'd wake up in severe pain in my stomach and back and constant throbbing like my bones were broken. Pain and I got real close in those early years. Ever since I was born, I was at the hospital at least 4 to 6 times a year with sickle cell. Every year. Sometimes for a week. Sometimes even up to a month. There's no conventional medical cure for sickle cell. The only treatment was high doses of strong pain medication, like Tylenol with codeine as a child, and Demerol or morphine as I got older. You know, the stuff that they give soldiers when their limbs get blown off in war. Hospitals only allow doses every 4 hours, but I had a high tolerance for medication because my pain was greater than most people's. After an hour, I was screaming in pain again. As a child, I'd be in the emergency room, screaming, squirming on a stretcher like I was about to die. Some evil nurses and doctors would try to shut me up. When they couldn't, they called security, wheeled me into the back room, and closed the door to muffle my screams. Finally, the pain medicine would settle me down. My family would rub the painful spots, trying to soothe me. But after visiting hours were over, it was just me and my comrade Pain. I saw a lot of death and disease in those hospitals. I shared rooms with kids with leukemia whose parents brought them anything they wanted, anything they wished for, because they were on their deathbeds. And it had a profound effect on my mentality. It turned me into a very no-nonsense little kid. As I got older, people always asked, "Are you tired? What's wrong with you? You look angry. Why are you so quiet? Are you upset? I always hated that shit. No, I'm not tired. No, I'm not angry. Well, maybe a little bit. I'm just not a happy-go-lucky motherfucker. I'm a serious dude because I grew up with a lot of pain, death, and madness. It's rare for me to be smiling and in a good mood. At age 4, I got into a fight with this white kid in the schoolyard for calling me a name I can't even remember. I hopped off the swings and threw a toy teapot at him and missed. He threw it back, and I tried ducking by bending over to the front, but I only ended up using the top of my forehead as a bat for his wild pitch. A big cartoon lump rose up on my forehead. Head bleeding, I saw the scared look on the white boy's face. He didn't mean to hit me in the head. The teacher called my father. After I told my pops the story in the car, he told me to stop crying. Don't ever duck down when somebody throws something at you, he said. Pops was also a karate sensei, a natural-born fighter, and had his own karate school for a few years before I was born. Just move to the side. After my forehead lump went down, my pop started teaching me karate moves. He enrolled me into a karate class on Jamaica Avenue on 169th Street. My mother didn't like it because of the full body contact, though contact didn't come until 2nd and 3rd degree white belt. My sensei had me cleaning the wood floor with a wet rag while barefoot in my uniform. This was for balance and stamina, like in the movie Karate Kid. Strength training. After 2 months, I got frustrated because I wasn't learning to fight yet. I caught a sickle cell crisis from that cold, wet floor, and Mom said my karate lessons were over. Pops was pissed. You turning him into a punk, he barked. Chest pain overwhelmed me, and I was admitted to Jamaica Hospital. Definitely not the best hospital in Queens. My mom's friend, Dr. Francis, worked there, a black female sickle cell specialist. After Dr. Francis got us in, the doctors informed my mother that I had acute chest syndrome, the sickle cell form of pneumonia. On that visit, I learned to make my presence felt in the emergency room. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. My parents had been trying to coach me on how to conduct myself, but I didn't catch on. Make noise. Hospital ERs don't give a good goddamn about people with sickle cell. But by the time I hit my teens, going to the ER was like going to war. A sickle cell crisis gets gradually worse as time passes. Normal red blood cells are small round circles that resemble a round piece of candy, like a Search Mint or a Lifesaver without the hole in the middle. When going into a sickle cell crisis, normal round red blood cells change to a crescent or a sickle shape. Those sickle-shaped blood cells create a domino effect, interlocking throughout the body, creating clotting and blocking oxygen from flowing through the bloodstream. Loss of oxygen, combined with the loss of blood flow, creates tremendous pain, risk of stroke, bone damage, and other life-threatening consequences. It also causes the immune system to weaken, and it makes it easy to get infections. Acute chest syndrome was no joke for a 4-year-old, and they put me in a big plastic bubble in the intensive care unit. My mother worked during the day, so my grandmother stayed all day and my moms came at night. One afternoon, when grandmoms came to see me, I was sleeping hard for a few hours. And when she tried waking me up, I wouldn't open my eyes. She called the doctor to check on me, and they said I was just sleeping. She called their superiors, and they said the same. But my grandmother, a Southern, strong-willed female from the old school, knew better. She told them that the next person that she was going to call would be her lawyer, if they didn't wake me up immediately. They went into a frenzy, finding that all my vital signs were deadly low, and I was slipping in and out of a coma. Grandma saved my life. Moms and grandmoms had a meeting with Dr. Francis to get me out of Jamaica Hospital. Dr. Francis had her own sickle cell clinic in a house on Farmers Boulevard in Jamaica, where I hated going because it meant I was getting a penicillin shot in my butt, one of her remedies for sickle cell. She told moms and grandmoms that Long Island Jewish Hospital was more prestigious than Jamaica Hospital, so I was transferred there for at least a month. The pediatrics unit at Long Island Jewish Hospital had air hockey, foosball, toys, and movies. Jamaica Hospital didn't have a single game or activity. As soon as I felt well enough, I dragged my IV pole down the hallway to the playroom. I was in sick kid heaven. The food was like home cooking. They had brand name cereals, corn pops, sugar smacks, frosted flakes. But no matter how much good stuff they had, it was still just a nasty ass hospital. People dying and infectious disease all around. When I got out the following month, it was back to the cold mornings, walking slowly to the school bus. I started getting used to this routine, landing in the hospital at least 6 times between the ages 4 and 5. My parents realized I had another serious problem around that age, pissing in the bed. Most men, let alone rappers, wouldn't dare admit this, but a side effect from drinking tons of water to keep my blood hydrated was waking up with a flood in my bed. "Why didn't you just get up to use the bathroom?" my pops used to yell. I tried to explain that I was just sleeping when it happened, so how could I get up? But Pops wasn't trying to hear that. He whipped my ass with the belt, thinking I was just scared of the dark and didn't want to walk to the bathroom at night. Grandma's bought this crazy gadget that was supposed to put an end to the bedwetting. A pair of padded underpants with a sensor in the crotch attached to a wire, which attached to my pointer finger, powered by a 9-volt battery. As soon as you started pissing, the sensor made the finger attachment vibrate to wake you up. Basically a pair of high-tech diapers. I felt like an idiot, but it was worth a try. The first night, I slept through the vibrating and woke up with the usual flood in my bed. My fingers still vibrating when I woke up. We tried a few more nights, to no avail. The gadget went into the garbage. In 1980, when I was 6, my grandma's paid for me to go to Woodmere Academy, a private elementary school 5 minutes from West Hempstead in a town called Malvern. The school was 99% white. The only other black kids were my friend Darren and his sister Michelle. Darren smelled like he stepped in shit all the time. It had to be his breath. I never had any racial problems at Woodmere, except one day in the locker room after gym class, a white kid named Max had $40 stolen from his locker and tried to blame me. Max was the first person I'd ever seen with his own credit card. Most people I knew had never even heard of credit cards, but this 7-year-old kid in my school had one. It was American Express. "Did you take my money?" Max looked in my direction. "No." Max and I had a body blow fight in the locker room, punching each other in the stomach, ribs, and chest, and the teachers broke it up. He found his money later and apologized. Why would he accuse me? The only reason I could think of was because I was black. The white kids were cool though, and a few of the girls had crushes on me. In my first grade class, there was a pretty white girl named Michelle, with long, brownish blonde hair. After graham crackers and apple juice during snack time one day, the whole class went outside for recess. Michelle and I were the last two to leave the classroom. She told me she liked me, put her leg around my waist, and placed my hand on her ass. I was a scared punk. My mind wasn't as advanced yet because I was absent from school so often and didn't hang out in Lakeview Park like the other kids my age due to my sickle cell. Being hospitalized for weeks and months caused me to miss out on the birds and the bees activities. I wasn't ready for Michelle's advances, but she was all over me. I think it had a lot to do with my grandmother's car. Sometimes, grandmas would drop me off at school in her brand spanking new Cadillac with a burgundy pinstripe on the side and the burgundy leather seats. Those white kids' parents dropped them off in Mercedes-Benzes and Rolls-Royces, so we gotta show them that your family got money too, she said. Michelle saw me getting out the car one morning and stared, starry-eyed. Grandmoms knew how to make a grand entrance. She lived, breathed, ate, slept, and shit show business. The world was her stage, and I learned a lot from her flashy actions. She would tell me about how she came up from Southside Jamaica to become the first black woman with her own building on Merrick Boulevard. Then hers was the first black family in Hempstead, Long Island, to build their own house. "Chaka, you gotta own your home," she said firmly, using my family's nickname for me after the Zulu King. "Black people must own their things." She bought her cars with cash, brand new out the showroom. "You should see the look on those white people's faces when they ask me how do I want to pay, and I say cash, pull out a bag full of money, and they start treating me very differently." "Never put all your money in one bank," Grandma said, showing me bank deposit booklets, each from a different bank, adding up to a couple of $1,000,000. She taught me not to touch my money once I had millions like she did. "Do you see all this money I have in these books? I get thousands of dollars in interest payments every month," she explained. "I can either deposit the interest and increase my accounts every month, or I can live off the interest and use it to pay my bills, but I'll never go broke." Grandma was very rich at that time. She wasn't supporting my mother and father financially. We were struggling to survive, but she did make sure her only grandson, me, was well educated. At Woodmere Academy, I got the best education that part of Long Island had to offer. On the bus ride after school, I was the last one dropped off, so I'd stare at the spacious mansions that the white kids went home to, watching the neighborhood become worse and worse the closer we got to my house. And I'd go home to Lakeview, back to all the blackness. I learned a couple of things at that school. I found out that white girls were real aggressive when they liked you, and that little white boys had credit cards. On weekends at my grandparents' house in Hempstead, my grandfather, Big Bud, worked on sheet music in his room while watching baseball on his small TV. The walls of his room were covered with posters from tours in Russia, Japan, all over the world. Besides baseball and jazz, Grandpops had a passion for golf. He bought me a mini plastic play school golf set and tried teaching me on the lawn. He also bought me a small saxophone and signed me up for Woodmere Academy's band. But as hard as Grandpops and I tried, I couldn't even handle Mary Had a Little Lamb. That year, my whole family came to see me play at the band concert in the school auditorium. There were 5 saxophonists on stage, including myself. "You were so good," my folks encouraged me after the show. "You sounded great." If they only knew I was only pretending to play, I thought, keeping it to myself. My horn wasn't blowing a damn thing, but I played it off because my grandfather was proud. My 2 best friends were Carrie, who lived on the same corner as my grandmother's Hempstead house, and Stobo, who was like a brother. We were 2 months apart in age and had known each other since birth. We called each other cousins. even cut our hands and rubbed our palms together to become blood brothers. When Carrie and Stobo slept over, Grandpops always came home drunk from his shows and took out his false teeth, smiling and chasing us around the house. It was a scary sight for a kid. Grandmoms would get pissed at him for being so drunk and loud. "Go to hell, you jackass," she'd yell after him as we scampered by. My father took me to see my grandfather perform at the Blue Note in Manhattan. I was the only little kid in the bar. But it was nothing new, because Pops was a heavy drinker and liked taking me along. As always, I ordered my favorite drink, 7-Up with cherry syrup and a couple of cherries on the rocks. And my Pops would order his, peach schnapps. People would stare as if to say, "How you got this little kid in a bar?" But nobody messed with my Pops. Grandpops played the sax like a madman, and the Blue Note crowd loved it. After Grandpop's shows or Grandmom's dance concerts, our tradition was to eat a big meal at a swanky restaurant and for me to order the same dish, lobster tails. It was usually the most expensive thing on the menu, and I never actually ate it, just dipped my bread into the butter. But Grandmoms got a kick out of me ordering it. My grandparents usually brought one of their famous friends to dine with us, like Ben Vereen, the dancer-actor from the movie Roots. He was Grandmom's student when he was a kid. Or Grandpops would bring Dizzy Gillespie or other famous jazz friends. And they all enjoyed the look on the waiter's face when I ordered first and chose the lobster tails with melted butter. My grandparents were from an era of vicious racism and poverty, so my grandmother especially loved to show off and let white people know she had money. One dreary winter evening, my mother, father, and I were at home watching Buck Rogers on TV when we got a phone call from the Nassau County Emergency Room. Grandmoms had been hit by a car while crossing Hempstead Turnpike leaving A&S department store. A hit and run. We rushed to the hospital. The doctor said she was paralyzed from the waist down and would never walk again. Miss Bernice Johnson, the queen of dance, paralyzed? Grandmoms came home in a wheelchair a few weeks later. I didn't see her down or depressed one time. "Doctors don't know shit. I could walk if I try hard enough," she said. She came from a family of tough Southern women. "I don't believe in can't." After about a year, Grandmoms was walking on crutches. And the following year, she was teaching classes, moving and kicking without assistance. Grandmom's annual concert at Lincoln Center was a major event that year, her big comeback. Stobo and I ran around Lincoln Center every year like it was our personal amusement park, sneaking into the balcony box seats. Cousin Craig dared us to climb up the catwalk to the lights in the rafters. We loved peeking at the women and girls changing costumes backstage. Our favorite was Tina Douglas, R&B singer Ashanti's mother. Ashanti, who wasn't even born yet, would soon grow up in my grandmom's school too. Tina was fine as hell, dark brown skin with a fat ass, big breasts and green eyes, decked out in Gucci boots and bags. She made us want to grow up fast. A few of the ladies would bend over and stretch, secretly knowing that Stobo and I were watching. At the end of the show, Grandmoms came out to thank the Lincoln Center crowd while Ben Vereen clapped on stage behind her. The audience gave her a standing ovation. After the show, you already know what it was. Lobster tails with hot butter sauce, of course. When I was 6 years old, Moms and Grandmoms enrolled me into dance school classes. They decided it was a good way to keep me healthy because with sickle cell, the body needs light exercise to allow the blood to properly circulate. I enjoyed the classes, but I never understood why Moms and Grandmoms and everyone else there was so passionate about that type of dancing. To me, it was boring and corny. The only thing I liked about it was My boy Stobo was there too, and being around all those girls. Tap dancing was my favorite class. One of Grandma's close friends was an old school tap dancer named Sandman Sims. He had this routine in which he'd sprinkle some sand on the floor, and when he tap danced on it, it made a unique crunching sound under his shoes, like the sand was a part of the beat. I was amazed. What I loved most about the dance school was that my grandmother owned it. Stobo and I ran amok in that place. It was our clubhouse. Plus Jamaica Avenue, the major Queens shopping area, was right outside. What more could a young devious mind ask for? On my 7th birthday, my pops pulled out a shiny, nickel-plated 380 in my Uncle Eddie's basement. Pops always told me that Eddie was a punk because he didn't bust his gun when they had beef with somebody over Eddie's sister. "I'm gonna teach you how to shoot a gun," Pops said. I was shook. I did what he told me. Pops put a small garbage can across the room to use as a target. He put the gun in my hand, warning me that the gunshot was going to be very loud when I squeezed that trigger. I calmed myself down. Finally, I fired my first shot. The first shot was stupid loud and scared me so bad I jumped way back. For the second shot, I held the gun with my right hand, tilted my head covering my right ear with my right shoulder, put my left hand over my left ear, and shot at the can again. Pops was really crazy. I think he just had me shooting to scare Eddie. We shot at that can for a couple hours, then we went home. Around that same time, Pops came home with a big BB rifle. We'd practice shooting birds up in the trees in our yard and at the park across the street from our house in Lakeview. After a week, the whole park was full of dead birds. Gross. I guess Pops was trying to make sure his son wasn't no punk because of sickle cell. That's why Pops was teaching me all this stuff. He was very intelligent, but as smart as he was, he must have had some type of criminal gene in his DNA. Yeah, he was a very wild boy who got into a lot of fights with the hands and the guns. Pops was one gun-happy motherfucker. Mom's got a job working for the New York City Housing Authority, helping people get apartments in the projects. Every 2 years, she was transferred to work in a different project. During the summer, she brought me to work with her, and I played in the playground of whatever hood she was working in. Harlem, Brooklyn, Queens. But the best was when they transferred Moms to Queensbridge Projects. She worked there for 6 years. It was the summer of 1982. I was 8, and Moms enrolled me into Reach Day Camp. Mom's office was on the infamous hill in Queensbridge, and the camp was across the street. Almost all the kids in QB went to Reese because it was right in the projects. I loved it because of the girls. QB had some real pretty girls. But when 5 o'clock hit, we would be back on the Long Island Railroad, back to Lakeview. Even though Moms toured the world with hit records, you know the music biz. After all the filet mignon, champagne, caviar, and limo rides, she never got the money she was owed. We were on welfare and food stamps until Mom got the housing authority job. But no matter what, Mom's always kept a positive attitude and a kind heart. Maybe that's why Pops thought he can get away with murder. One evening, when we came back from QB, Moms found Pop's heroin works hidden in the cosmetics bag. Needles, syringes, spoons, cotton balls, tourniquet. They argued back and forth. He left and didn't come back home for months. When he did come back, Moms made his ass sleep on the couch. When I was 8, Pops took me for a ride and told me about how he'd been addicted to heroin since he was 14 and that he and Moms might split up. No kid wants to see a parent split up. But Pops explained it in a way that made sense. Then we pulled up to a jewelry store. "Wait in the car," Pops told me. "I'll be right back." 5 minutes later, He came running out with a big brown shopping bag full of gold and all types of jewels. This fool just robbed the spot. We got 4 blocks away, and the Nassau County Police were immediately on our ass. After a high-speed chase through Hempstead, Pops finally came to his senses and stopped the car. They put me in the back seat with him. Pops had the cuffs on behind his back, and I held his hand all the way to the precinct. The cops gave me chips and soda while I waited for Moms to pick me up. She went buck stupid on Pops after that, screaming and yelling. "How could you do this? That's our son, our little boy." My grandma's bailed him out 7 hours later, and he and Mom separated permanently. When he came home later that night, though, we finished our conversation from earlier in the car. My Pops was a cool, calm nigga, chillin', like what happened earlier was nothing. I loved that motherfucker. The next day, Moms and I were back in QB. She dropped me off at camp, then went to work. Reese was empty that morning. Only the counselor and 3 other kids were there. 2 of them were girls. The best-looking girl walked over to me and asked me if I was new to the hood. We walked away to the card tables right outside the door. She made it real easy for a little 8-year-old without much game because she did all the talking. Meanwhile, the girl's boyfriend and 7 of his friends walked up behind me. She was quiet all of a sudden. Just as I started getting into the conversation, a hand grabbed my neck from behind and turned me around. "What you think you doing?" Her boyfriend barked. He grabbed my face and pushed me up against the wall to let me know I was talking to his girlfriend. "I'm new here. I ain't know it was your girl," I told him. "Better watch yourself," the kid warned as he and his boys walked off. I went back in the building. I was really about to start kicking it to Shorty, I thought, embarrassed and mad as hell. But I'm happy I ain't get jumped. It's funny how life works, because I ended up being cool with that kid, Deaky, like 10 years later. He never remembered that day when I brought it up. Later that day, they took us to free lunch at a school on 21st Street. Free lunch was disgusting. I found maggots at the bottom of my salad on a cardboard tray the first day. I never ate there again. But they still made us go. Sometimes we got on a yellow bus for free lunch at another school in Astoria, Queens. I carried a pocket knife that came in handy one afternoon. On the bus to Astoria free lunch, a big fight with 4x4s and bottles broke out with kids from another hood. The kids tried to run inside our bus and beat people up. I started swinging my pocket knife. I had them niggas shook. It was rough for a little kid, man. Something was bound to go down at free lunch, in QB, or the locker room at Astoria Pool. I ain't never telling Moms, because I know she won't let me go anymore. I kept all the crazy stuff to myself. A popular thing with the kids in Queensbridge was making rock shooters out of quarter-water bottle tops. When I first came around, I would see kids shooting rocks out of them shits, and if one of those rocks hit you, it felt worse than getting shot with a CO2-powered BB gun. I quickly learned how to make one, because all the kids were carrying them around like guns. First, you buy a quart of water and a pack of balloons. Drink the juice, and after it's empty, take a knife or razor and cut the top of the bottle off. Put the balloon over the top part that you drink from. After that, all you need is a pocket full of small rocks or pennies. Drop a rock or penny in, pull the balloon back, let go. Man, that shit will go through a windshield if you do it right. We used to have ill shootouts, 20 kids against 20 kids. Queensbridge didn't have concrete pavement back then. It was all dirt paths and hills. The projects were being rebuilt with basketball courts, fences, and playgrounds. On the block after day camp, I'd listen to the older dudes freestyle back and forth. I wrote my first song, "You's a Crackhead," when I was 9. I heard one of the older dudes rapping about crackhead, so I made my own version. My mom's brother and friends in QB told me it was good and gassed me up. That was the beginning of my road to the riches, the moment that I first started rapping. A Broadway show, The Tap Dance Kid, needed a little boy to play the starring role. My grandmoms had major connections in that world. She gave the producers photographs of me, and they called saying they wanted me to be the new Tap Dance Kid. Grandmoms explained that the casting people were on the phone and they wanted me to be the star. She told me I'd be famous and make a lot of money, but that it would be very hard work and I'd have to perform 2 shows every night. I was stuck, I was scared, plus I wasn't even really into dancing. I thought about it for 5 minutes and told her, no thank you. For the next 10 years, grandmoms kept telling everybody I turned down the starring role of a major Broadway musical. The kid who wound up getting the part was Alfonso Ribeiro. He appeared in a Pepsi commercial with Michael Jackson after that and became a TV star on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Hey, I guess Alfonso owes me. I did him a huge favor. Sometimes I think, what if? Nah. In 1983, near to when the movie Breaking came out, grandmoms talked me into performing at our annual concert at Lincoln Center. I've been taking her dance classes since I was 6. But at age 9, breakdancing and rap music were my new thing, and I wanted to stop the other dance stuff. I was at that age where I wanted to be cool. Stobo and I would be outside the crib in Hempstead with a flattened cardboard box and a radio battling 2 other kids on my block. We wore gray nylon windbreak outfits, white gloves, trucker hats with Playboy bunnies on it. We thought we was breakdance masters. I asked my grandmother to let us do a breakdance routine at her next concert. "Only if you both perform the regular dance classes at the show," she told me. We agreed. It was a small price to pay, and was the first time my grandmoms incorporated a hip-hop routine in her concert. We killed it, along with the tap and African and ballet, all that. She thought it was cute to have her little grandson dancing in her school, but Stobo and I were quickly growing out of it. I can't front. Dance school was fun when we were younger. An older girl named Kerry hooked Stobo and I up with these twins, Renee and Michelle, 2 fly-ass, light-skinned West Indian shorties. They were in all our classes. Stobo had Michelle, and I had Renee. We all had fun. Grandmoms was cool with the singer-actress Diana Ross, who enrolled her daughter Chutney at the school. My grandmother told Diana that Chutney couldn't pull up in limos or Bentleys because it would make too much of a scene. They agreed it would be better for her to arrive in a regular car. Chutney was real cute. She was the same age and in class with Stobo and me. When the word got around that Diana Ross's daughter was taking class, Kerry pulled me into the hallway, offering all kinds of ways that I should approach her and get her to be my girlfriend. "Chaka, I'm telling you, you gotta get her," Kerry said. "Forget about Renee. Chutney's rich." Kerry tried her best, but it never happened. Chutney was there for 6 months, and she got tired of all the attention. Diana Ross was doing a huge concert at Central Park in Manhattan on July 21st, 1983. My grandmother provided her with backup dancers, and my father helped with the stage production. Diana asked me to join her on stage because she thought I was cute. "I want you to walk out with me at the end of the show and say goodnight," she told me during rehearsals. "Do you want to do it?" "Yes." On the night of the show, there was lightning and thunder and then buckets of rain. The lawn was a blanket of deep, muddy patches, but it was summertime in Central Park, so the crowd wasn't concerned. They came to see Diana Ross. It was packed. She performed soaked, and you know black women and their hair in the rain don't mix. Well, Diana didn't care. The production people told me to get ready to get on stage. I was petrified and changed my mind. My moms, pops, and grandmoms tried to convince me, but I said no. That was the first and the last time I caught a case of stage fright. Our feet got stuck in the mud on the way out the park. My sneaker came off in the sludge, and so did my mother's shoes. No lobster tails that night, just our tails in the shower. On October 20th, 1984, Moms got a phone call from my grandmother saying that my grandfather had a heart attack and died in his sleep in a hotel room in Kansas City while he was on tour. He was 73. The entire jazz community came out for his wake 5 days later at St. Peter's Church on 54th Street and Lexington Avenue in Manhattan. Minister Reverend Genzel, who was also a jazz musician, helped make it all possible. My father was on the run from his jewelry store case, laying low, so he couldn't make it. I know that hurt him. The service was like a party with a lot of sad faces. I walked up to Grandpop's open casket and stared at him. My boy Stobo was with me. I leaned over and kissed Grandpops on the forehead. It was ice cold. That was the first and the last time I touched a dead body. While Stobo and I were staring at him, it felt like Grandpops might sit up and do the scary face with his teeth in hand. After the service, his body was cremated and his ashes spread out into the ocean. Pops kidnapped me that same year and took me to Detroit, where he'd been staying since he and Mom split. I went over to my grandmom's in Hempstead, and Pops was waiting for me. He didn't take me by force. He just didn't tell Moms where we were going. I guess he missed me and decided to take his son. I think Pops also wanted to show me how he was living now, because his cousin Beverly had this nigga ballin'. She had her own investment firm in Detroit and gave Pops a high-ranking position. Pops was wearing these fly-ass three-piece suits without the necktie. He was open off his new whip, a 5-speed Renault he had shipped from France. Beverly was richer than a motherfucker. In downtown Detroit, there was a skyscraper with her name on it. We lived in the finished part of a mansion she was having built. Beverly's son, Eric, was around 18, and her daughter, Cecily, was 12, 2 years older than me. Their backyard had a river where we went fishing for crawfish. Man, we were in Detroit living a life. I think Pops waited almost 4 months before he called Moms and told her where we were. She knew Pops had me, she just didn't know where. She threatened to call the cops, but I lived in Detroit for more than a year. Moms probably didn't want to upset me because I was happy to be with Pops' crazy ass anyway. Plus, Cecily and I had a crush on each other. The term kissing cousins comes to mind. I found out Pops and Beverly had a little something going on themselves. No wonder he was an overnight success. We went to Detroit Tigers baseball games a lot. I enjoyed the popcorn and the hot dogs more than the baseball. Pops took me to see Scarface, starring Al Pacino, on opening night. Now that was a fucking movie. Those three-piece suits without the necktie that Pops was wearing almost looked exactly like the ones Tony Montana had on. I guess that was the style. Cousin Cecily was a very pretty, dark brown skinned girl. She grew up with a lot of money, but was a down-to-earth tomboy. She made her own experimental facial cream products out of mud, perfume, and all types of weird stuff, using me as a guinea pig putting crap all over my face. She was like a white girl compared to the black girls I was used to back home. She spoke like a white girl and introduced me to rock and roll music. The J. Geils Band, Centerfold, Cecily's favorite song, constantly played on her little 45 portable record player. She taught me how to eat artichokes, watch WWF wrestling, and speak Detroit. Like instead of saying soda, they say pop. Then all of a sudden, the ride was over. Mom's threats of calling the police worked, and Pops agreed to send me back home. I was back in New York, except we weren't in Lakeview anymore. Mom's had moved to Left Rack City, Queens. Pops wound up coming back to New York too, got caught by the police, and ended up doing a year in Nassau County Jail for the jewelry store thing. Once his bid was over, he moved back into the house in Lakeview with his new woman, Rita, and her teenage kids, Leon and Loretta. I wanted to be with my pops, so Moms allowed me to stay with him and go to school over there for a while. I walked to Howard T. Herbert Middle School, cutting through the woods and crossing a construction landfill with my next-door neighbors Angel and Ronaldo. In Lakeview, I had only a handful of friends. Angel and Ray, Todd, and my man Shamik. Shamik had all the cool shit. Gazelle glasses, shell-toe Adidas, and a giant boombox radio. When I saw his shell toes, I told my moms and pops I wanted a pair. But they bought me the Olympians instead. At school the next day, Sha said, "Nigga, them shits got 5 stripes. Adidas only got 3. But Sha was my nigga. He didn't make fun of my shoes, at least not to my face. One afternoon, on the walk home from school, a crew of brothers, the Charlestons, were beating everybody up who cut through the woods. As I walked out of the woods and onto their street, I saw one of the brothers hitting people with a wooden Louisville slugger bat on their legs, arms, and backpacks. Pops had taught me how to snatch a bat or a stick from somebody if they were about to swing it at you, practicing with a broomstick in slow motion. Never duck or try to move out the way if somebody's about to swing a bat at you, Pops told me. Rush them, get in close, then use your arm to grab the arm that they're swinging the bat with and hyperextend their elbow. But it's not the same in a real-life situation. The kid was about to take a swing at me, so I rushed him. But he was too big and hit me in the mouth with the slugger. Yo, this nigga made my bottom teeth go through my bottom lip. I was leaking blood in a daze. The expression on my friends' faces as they walked home with me made me think my face had been destroyed. In my bathroom mirror, I saw a little vein hanging out the hole right under my bottom lip. Uncle Lenny came by, and when he saw my face, he took me to the hospital to get stitches. I still got this scar to this day. Uncle Lenny was always very elusive. He'd be missing in action for long periods of time, and then suddenly show up at our house. Lenny wasn't my real uncle, but I was raised to call him Uncle Lenny. He always took care of me when he was around. My mother made me move back in with her after about a year because I was sleeping in the cold, damp basement in Lakeview and kept getting sick. Mom's move to Left Rack in 1985, the hood right between Jamaica and Queensbridge, was a major turning point in my life. I turned 11, and she was letting me hang outside until the streetlights came on. The apartment complex was co-ops, not projects, but with all the drug activity, it wasn't much of a difference. Crack had come out a few years earlier, and almost every kid my age was selling it for older dudes. My first week in Left Rack, I was walking to the store, and who was sitting on a short wall by the parking lot but my friend Shamik, who lived around the corner from me in Lakeview. Sha and his family had just moved to Left Rack. What a fucking coincidence. Shaw was obviously doing his thing slinging drugs. You can usually tell if somebody was slinging drugs by looking at their jewelry and clothes. Shamik had all the new sneakers before they even came out, fresh jeans and snorkel coats. I enrolled in Halsey Junior High School, right across the Long Island Expressway from Left Rack. On the first day of school, I saw kids with big rope chains, rings, and all the latest fashions. Left Rack was a cash cow for drug dealers. Everybody sold drugs. It made me stop caring about school and start caring about how I looked. Jewelry, clothes, sneakers, Nike Air Maxes, Louis Vuitton, triple fat goose bubble jackets. When the school bell rang at 3 p.m., everyone from Left Rack walked home together. Within the first 2 weeks, I got into it with this Indian kid who thought he was tough because he was taller than me. Everybody called me Pee-wee because I was so small. I don't recall exactly how the fight started, but I know for sure how that shit finished. A bunch of people from my block whipped the cowboy shit out that kid. After that day, we beat people up on our way home just for fun. This African kid named Mabunda didn't like me and wanted to fight. I was shook. In the crib on the couch, I'd be daydreaming of ways to sneak attack this motherfucker. One of my ideas was to walk up to him. "Hey man, I don't want no beef with you, man," I'd say, reaching my hand out to shake his. While I had his hand, I'd try to break his nose or something. I practiced my punches beating up my mom's flowery, forest green couch pillows. I had another idea of carrying a D battery in my pocket to make my fist more solid. Bunda and I never got around to fighting each other and became real cool a year later. The first year of school was wild, and it only got wilder. Every building in Left Rack was named after a foreign country. I lived on the 5th floor of Peru. I made friends with 2 Puerto Rican brothers, Eric and Booby, on the other end of the hallway. The Peru building's lobby was attached to Colombia, where a dude named E and his brother Pop and my boys Justice and Zion lived. We all went to school together. I was coolest with Booby. I used to be across the hall in their crib every day. We ate dinner together and stayed up all night watching TV. I tried learning some Spanish from them, but I only picked up on the curse words. Booby was a DJ and had all the new rap albums. We wrote down entire songs to learn every lyric word for word. The Jungle Brothers, Jimbrowski, was our jam. They shouted out, "Jimbrowski in Left Rack." It made us proud to be from Left Rack. 1986 was the year of Mike Tyson. I saw my first Tyson fight at Booby's crib. It lasted about 30 seconds. After the fight, Booby and I went outside. Rakim, Biz Markie, Slick Rick, the Jungle Brothers, and Big Daddy Kane blasted from the boom boxes, and everybody was drinking and smoking. It was almost dark, so my time was limited. We drank our first tall cans of malt liquor, Schlitz, with the Blue Bull on the label, because the curiosity was killing us. My brother Greg gave me some sips in his beer when I was 5 or 6. Even let me take a pull of his weed. One toke, I was choking. After we tried a few swigs from the tall cans, I didn't drink again for a long time, because it was nasty. By the time I turned 11 and was living in Left Rack, my attitude about dance classes changed. I can't do that shit no more. But I was still there every Saturday because that was my family's business and because that was our hangout spot. I got my first piece of pussy in that place when I was 11. One Saturday evening, my Spanish homie Sean from Roosevelt, Long Island, took a girl to the basement and told her if she wanted to have sex with him, that she would have to let me hit it first. "Go ahead, have sex with him," he told the girl, nodding toward me. She agreed. I kept my boxers on. Afterward, I went upstairs to wash up in the bathroom, and there was blood all over my boxers. I looked down like, yo, what the fuck is this? She had her period. Disgusting. I must have washed my pole like 30 to 40 times in a row. It was traumatic, and that was my first time having sex. My mom's took dance classes at my grandmother's school in Jamaica ever since she was a little girl, and was still doing it faithfully every weekend. My grandmother had a group of female friends who helped her run the dance studio, including one of her best friends, Miss Barbara Brooks. Her grandson was Stobo, and he was still there every Saturday just like me. No longer confined to classes, we ran wild in the school and on Jamaica Avenue, along with Stobo's real cousin Craig. Grandmom's other best friend, Joyce Gresham, had a grandson, John Michael. We called him JM. He was only 6, but he always wanted to hang out with Stobo and me. It seemed like every girl in Queens went to my grandmother's dance school. A lady named Miss Beverly Edge had 3 daughters, Donna, Wendy, and Kerry. The youngest, Kerry, who tried to set me up with Chutney Ross, was around 7 years older than us, and taught Stobo and me all the secrets about what girls wanted and liked. Sitting on the floor in the dance studio one afternoon, Kerry was stretching while schooling Stobo and me about what women want. "Chaka, you always quiet and laid back," Kerry told me. "That's good, 'cause girls don't like guys that act foolish like little boys." Kerry tried to play matchmaker, hooking Stobo and me up with the pretty girls. We used to stare at the older girls in their tight dance uniforms, and Lord, there were some real thick bodies. Stobo and I had a crew called the Jungle Brothers, named after the rap group. The crew consisted of me, Stobo, our friend Roger, who became a professional dancer, and my homie Sean. The sole purpose of our crew was to run trains on the girls in the dance school. I'd find a girl, take her into an empty room at the school, trying to convince her that if she wanted me, then she had to show my brothers love too. Some girls went for it, some didn't. At least 8 of the girls who went for it were snitched on by other girls. When parents started pulling their daughters out of the school, we got in trouble. But we kept right on doing our thing on the low. Roger was serious about making dance his career. He was West Indian and lived across the street from the USA Diner on Merrick Boulevard in Rosedale, Queens, a popular hangout spot for girls and hustlers. There was loads of action by Roger's house. His mother was strict, and he had a sister, Sandra, and an older brother known as Call Me Al. Roger explained that they called his brother Call Me Al because when they first moved to Rosedale, the dudes in his neighborhood tried to test his heart. When they asked his name, Roger's brother replied, "Just call me Al." A fight broke out and his brother whipped everybody's asses. From that point on, they gave him respect, and their name, Call Me Al, stuck. Kool Rock Ski from the 80s rap group The Fat Boys lived down the block by Rosedale Bowling Alley. His bandmate, Buffy, aka the Human Beatbox, always drove up and down Merrick Boulevard in different Mercedes-Benz 190s with two-tone colors and curtains on the windows. Kool Rock's brother, Blaze, who I was real cool with, often hung out at Roger's crib. There was endless mischief to get into at Roger's crib. Green Acres Mall and Sunrise Multiplex were in walking distance. The Ninth Posse, a well-known street gang in that part of Queens, threw a lot of parties. Kerry dated one of the gang members, so she invited us. There were also a lot of reggae music parties because that side of Queens had a huge West Indian population. Roger, Stobo, Sean, Stobo's cousin Craig, and I bought 40 ounces of beer from Poppin' Kim's convenience store on Merrick Boulevard. Ice cold with the frost still on them, and hit all the parties. Beer was still nasty to me, but we drank it on those party nights. Late one night, Craig came up with a plan to break into a school a few blocks away in Rosedale. Craig had just came home from jail the year before and was already looking for trouble. He was 7 years older than us, around 18, and was the ringleader of all our early rebellion. We climbed up the side of the school and through an open window. We stole phones, copy machines, and other electronics. Craig sold it all for petty cash. Craig always had some type of scheme. He took Stobo and me on missions all over Queens, daring us to cross the Long Island Railroad tracks by Linden and Farmers Boulevard and to run across the Belt Parkway for thrills. After Craig turned us out with all this crazy shit he had us doing, we started doing a lot of wild pranks on our own. One summer morning, around 2 a.m., Roger and I saw a McDonald's 16-wheeler delivery truck pulled up in the McDonald's parking lot across from the USA Diner. From Roger's backyard, we saw that the back of the truck was open, so we ran over and took what we could. Crates of eggs, boxes of hash browns, burgers, buns, cheese, biscuits, pancakes, syrup, ketchup. Roger's refrigerator and freezer was filled with food. I don't remember what he told his moms, but the next morning she cooked us a big breakfast. Stover and I were chilling at my grandmother's house in Hempstead one day when grandmas told us the TV star Emmanuel Lewis, aka Webster, and his brother were coming over. A girl from the dance school had started dating Webster's brother. Even though Webster was a dwarf or a midget, his brother wasn't. I called Carrie down the block to tell him the news. "Yo, Webster's coming to my house," I said. "Come over if you want to meet him." A few hours later, Webster, Carrie, Stobo, and I were in the living room when Webster started showing us his breakdance move. Backspins, windmills, even headspins. Oh shit, Webster can breakdance. He's good too. I remember seeing pictures of him and Michael Jackson together, with Mike holding him up, carrying him like a baby. That didn't look too right to me. "Yo, what's up with you and Michael Jackson?" I asked Webster straight up. "What do y'all talk about when y'all together?" Webster got quiet and changed the subject. So I asked again, "Is Michael gay? What's up with him for real?" Webster acted as if he didn't hear my questions and walked into the room where my grandmoms was talking to his brother. I knew that Webster later denied it, but Carrie, Stobo, and I laughed about it for a long time, saying that Michael was a fruit cup and Webster was a little boy toy. I wanted my 12th birthday to be an event. Since Craig had just came home from doing a bid, grandmoms had given him a job cleaning and locking up the studio at night, so his parole officer would get off his back. I told Craig to get some weed and I'd buy the 40s. We were all going to get high for the first time late that night after everybody left. Stobo, Craig, Roger, Sean, and a tap dancer named Derek. Craig and Derek were the oldest. They'd both been high and drunk before, but it was the first time for the rest of us. We got so high and pissy drunk in my grandmother's office, Stobo stumbled out the building crying and screaming, "I'm blind! I can't see!" We walked from Jamaica Avenue up Merrick Boulevard all the way to Rosedale and crashed at Roger's crib. Stobo threw up in the toilet and passed out with his pants around his ankles on the bathroom floor. He had us all cracking up. That night was a pivotal point. I was about to become a teenager, and I thought I was becoming a man. I guess all the criminal, juvenile, delinquent mischief I was getting into was my way of having fun, since sickle cell didn't allow me to do sports and stuff the other kids were into. I'm becoming a man, I thought. I have to make my own decisions, take control of my destiny. At 12, I started seriously getting into rap music. Rap exhibited the aggressiveness that had been in my heart and mind all my life. The first albums I bought were LL Cool J's Radio and Run DMC's self-titled debut, Sucker MCs. I repeated the verses to my moms, acting as if I wrote them. Rap music made me feel good for a change. One day after school, Booby came over and spit a verse for me. "Whose verse is that?" I asked. He looked at me like I was crazy. "You don't know about the symphony?" We walked to Booby's crib and he played the record for me. The song was from Marley Marl's In Control Volume 1 album. The verse Booby spit was Kool G Rap. "You can't replace me, ice me or ace me, base me, face me, slice me, erase me, bite me or taste me. I show you that I got force. My rap burns your mouth like hot sauce." After I heard that, there was no turning back. I was going to be a rap star. September came around again and it was time for back to school shopping. And my moms couldn't afford the black construction Timbs that I wanted. She put a pair of discount $19 motorcycle boots that looked like they were from Mad Max on layaway. I hated them. I wanted what was popular in the hood, so I decided to try my hand at crack. The biggest dealers in Left Rack went to my school. Two of them, my man Steve and my other man Jason, both of them wore jewelry, suede jackets in every color, and different sneakers every day. They had to be making $10,000 a week, no lie. Those kids had other kids our age moving G-Packs for them. A G-Pack was $1,000 worth of crack. There was an older dude in his mid-20s, B, who everyone worked for. After the first day of the new school year, I went to Jason's crib, where they cooked and bagged up the stuff. I told Steve and Jason that I wanted to get down. They gave me a test pack, about $100 worth of crack in $10 vials. I walked around the hood, sold it, and brought them the money. This is easy, I thought. Jason gave me one more test pack. I walked around and made 3 sales in the multi-level parking lot where people sold because it was shielded from the outside view. 2 white plainclothes cops walked toward me. I tried to walk away. "Hey kid, come here, stop." They ran up and found the crack in my pocket. "What the hell is this little kid doing selling crack?" One undercover asked the other, then turned to me. "Why is somebody your age selling drugs?" I was 12, but I looked 8. They took the vials and sent me on my way. Still shook, I hopped the fence and took the shortcut home. The next day, when I told Jason what happened, he didn't believe me. He wanted his money, but I ain't have it to give. The following morning, Jason was waiting for me outside of school. He wanted to fight. "Alright, cool," I said. "We could fight." While I was taking off my jean jacket and backpack, he snuffed me, knocking me down to the ground. He kicked me in my stomach and groin. All I could do was ball up into the fetal position until some girls from my building pulled Jason up off me. People watching the fight said Jason didn't score no points by not letting me take my backpack off. He didn't leave no bruises on my body, just my ego. Shamik, my boy from Long Island, who had also moved to Left Rack, and his homeboys asked if I wanted to get Jason back, but I let it go and stopped selling drugs for a while. I bought a switchblade and a BB gun and brought them to school every day. A gang called Boom Bash from Jamaica would beat people up, like 50 of them, waiting after school. A couple of the gang members, Bam Bam and K Love, used to sit at my lunch table. I got cool with them, so I ain't had to worry about getting jumped. But I kept weapons on me just in case. You never know. One day, I left my mini black elephant skin JanSport backpack in the class by mistake, and the teacher brought it into the principal's office.
Albert Johnson?
I was called to his office over the loudspeaker.
Albert Johnson, please report to the principal's office immediately.
When I got there, he pulled the switchblade and the BB gun from my bag. I'm supposed to call the cops and have you arrested and expelled, the principal said. But I'm going to give you a break this time. He called my mom's instead to tell her I was suspended for 2 weeks. Moms had to leave work to get me and yelled the whole walk home. I was on punishment for a month. I had to be home by 4 p.m. instead of when the streetlights came on. Lying in my bed with my window halfway open, I could hear the whistle from the beginning of Rakim's My Melody, blasting from a boombox. Laughter and loud chatter from everybody on the block chilling on the benches in the spring air. I was fiending to be back outside. After I got off punishment, I started spending weekends at my grandmother's house again. My grandmother had a VHS camcorder and tripod to record her classes and concerts. Carrie and I made a video to Slick Rick's Teenage Love from his new album, Adventures of Slick Rick, in my grandmother's living room, along with at least 10 other videos. Carrie and I watched them just to make fun of ourselves. One night I passed out on a folded out cushion seat in Carrie's basement bedroom. In the morning, I woke up soaking wet. I pissed this nigga's cushion seat. Foul. Carrie gave me dry clothes and a towel to clean up. I was too damn old to be pissing in the bed. The night after that embarrassing episode, Carrie stayed at my grandmother's crib along with Stobo. Grandmoms had just bought an Isuzu Impulse. She bragged about the car because it talked when you left the door open. Don't wear your seatbelt or left the lights on. And it was fast. 2 a.m. rolled around and I stole the keys from my grandmother's nightstand while she was sleeping. Carrie, Stobo, and I snuck outside and got in the car.
The left door is ajar.
Goddamn talking car almost got us busted. We quietly shut the doors, started the engine, and we were gone. I'd never driven before, except for when Pops would sit me on his lap and let me stare when I was 6 or 7. Hempstead was like a ghost town at night. No police. After an hour circling the block and practicing parking, we snuck back inside. There's nothing like the thrill of stealing your grandmother's car for a late-night joyride. Stobo and I borrowed the car until we had driving down pat. We never got caught. Back in Left Rack, I finally got off suspension. I went back to school, back to the drama. After school one day, the Boom Bash crew was outside deep. My boys Bam Bam and K-Love told me some white boy had called a girl a nigger. When the white boy came out of the school, he had no idea what was waiting for him. 50 black gang members alongside the girl. Ouch, this is gonna hurt, I thought. The girl screamed and spit a lungie in his face. One by one, all 50 gang members spit on the white kid. When they were done, the white boy went home with his entire body covered in yellow slime. They could have beaten the life out of him, but decided to humiliate him instead. We walked back to the hood laughing our heads off. That weekend, Stobo stayed in my crib in Left Rack. We saw a large shadow drop past my 5th floor bedroom window and heard a loud thump. A man jumped or had been thrown off the 16-story Peru building and landed on the park bench, cracking it in half, blood pouring from his face. Stobo and I ran outside. "Oh, wow," we both exclaimed, staring at his splattered brains. "Cool." We passed by the man's dead body, gazing in amazement, before the cops came and covered him up. We walked to the store on 57th Avenue, the drug strip in Lefrak. We went straight to the toy aisle and filled our pockets with bendable WWF wrestling figures. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Store security escorted Stobo and me into a back room and threatened to call the cops, but called our parents instead. Here we go again. Stobo started crying. My mom's sister, Aunt Charlotte, who was watching us that day, came to get us. Aunt Charlotte's gangster, like a motherfucker. She was a bartender at a bar in Long Island City, Queens, back in the day. And one night, a man with a gun walked in, taking everybody up to the roof one by one, shooting them dead. Aunt Charlotte was last. The gunman led her up to the roof and shot her in the back of the head. She was the only one lucky enough to live. The bullet was lodged in the base of her head by her spine and still caused her severe migraines. "Why did you have to pull this while I'm watching you?" Aunt Charlotte said. When my moms got home, she held my right arm up in the air and whooped me like a slave with a plastic laundry line, the same cord girls used to jump rope. Yow! I hopped around trying to block the hits. When she finished, welts burnt all over my legs and ass. I didn't shoplift again for a long time. That Easter, my mom's brother and I went to Nana's crib in Ravenswood Projects. Nana, my mother's mother, Miss Bernie Johnson, was a heavy-set, high-yellow woman with hazel green eyes like my mother's. Nana chain-smoked cigarettes and worked as a token booth clerk at the train station on Jackson Avenue in Long Island City. A sweet lady who spoke with a classic nasal New York accent. Her apartment in Ravenswood looked like a souvenir store because Nana traveled the world collecting trinkets. Her favorite possessions were her Jet magazines, every issue stacked on the coffee table. My favorite thing to do at Nana's crib was climb the big Central Park-looking rocks in front of her building. Nana and I would toss shelled peanuts down to the squirrels on those rocks and watch them pounce. Besides her token booth job, Nana had a side hustle, selling bottles of imitation perfume and cologne at the beauty salons in Long Island City. The boxes for those bottles would read, "If you like Ralph Lauren, then you'll love Rudolph Laurenti." But the knockoff smelled just like the real thing. My favorites were the fake Drakkar and gray flannel. Nana had me smelling good for school. Uncle Charlie, my mother's brother, who came back from the Vietnam War mentally messed up, traveled from the VA hospital upstate New York to Nana's for the holidays and always brought me a big black garbage bag full of model Army planes, tanks, and trucks. There were 90 pieces to glue together, put stickers on, and paint. I was too young and impatient, so I never completed one of those things. The highlight of going to Nana's crib was her fried chicken wings, the best in Black history. Salty like a motherfucker, but amazingly good. The summer of 1986 was a wild one. A lot of older dudes were getting murdered in Lefrak over drug wars. Guns were easier to get than ever. The hoods became more violent, and the streets of New York began to change. The following September, my mom's transferred me to a Lutheran school on Queens Boulevard near Lefrak. She realized that I was being influenced by my environment after seeing that bag of weapons I've been going to school with. We had to wear uniforms, a white button-down shirt, clip-on tie, blazer, shoes, and slacks. I was embarrassed to walk home in my uniform, while the public school kids wore regular clothes. I started acting up even more after school to prove to my friends in the hood that I was still cool. When Halloween came around, 15 of us ran around Left Rack wilding after dark, egging and breaking car windows, slapping innocent people with socks filled with baby powder. A cop rolled by inside a 3-wheel scooter car. We egged him and ran across the bridge that crossed the Long Island Expressway while a cop chased us in a little scooter. We got to the top of the bridge and all looked at each other like, "Why are we running?" We turned around, surrounded the scooter, shook it back and forth until it tipped over, then jetted back to Left Rack. I wasn't trying to be on punishment again, so I ran home, fast, without looking back. My birthday was major that November because I turned 13. Moms and grandmoms gave me a Genesis turntable, headphones, a speaker, and cash to buy some records. A month later, I got another turntable, mic, and a mixer for Christmas. I started making my own mixtapes, rapping and blending records like Too Short's Freaky Tales and Biz Marquis's Nobody Beats the Biz. 2 years flew by at that Lutheran school. The classes were small, so the work was easy to learn. But the uniform sucked. I couldn't wait for it to be over. The summer after junior high school graduation, I wanted to get a tattoo like the flying parachute my father had on his left forearm, an airborne tat from his paratrooper days. Before I was born, he was a Special Forces Green Beret in the Army who went on several POW rescue missions. I brought my fake ID to the tattoo shop in Long Island across from the Belmont racetrack. The heavyset, gray-bearded guy behind the counter who looked like Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead laughed and told me to come back when I turned 18. During a trip to Virginia to visit my cousins on my pop's side of the family a few months later, I found a tattoo shop that didn't care that I was 13 and gave me my first tattoo for $30, a Tasmanian devil on my right shoulder. Back in New York, I was one of the only kids my age with a tattoo, so I rolled up my t-shirt on the right side so everybody can see. My second tattoo was a skeleton swinging from barbed wire on my right bicep. I only wanted tattoos because Pops had them. When I showed Moms, she almost had a heart attack. She worried that they would affect my sickle cell, but they didn't. I got 3 tats that summer. The third one was a dragon that I saw on the tattoo parlor wall, and I thought that it would look cool on my right hand. I was a crazy little kid. I blamed sickle cell and my father. A month later, I had to go to the hospital for 2 days. Back home, depressed and fed up with the pain, God, the world, and myself, I wanted to commit suicide because of my sickle cell. I tied a rope around my closet pole and tried hanging myself, but it didn't feel too good. I wanted to end pain, not create more. So I scratched that plan. My next idea was to slit my wrist. The sharpest knife I could find in the house was a steak knife with a brown wooden handle. I took it into my room and started cutting my wrist, but that hurt too. Suicide was too damn painful. Moms walked into my room while I was on the closet floor looking crazy with a steak knife in my hand and a noose on my closet pole. "What the hell are you doing?" she asked. I told her I wanted to kill myself because I was tired of sickle cell. She spoke to me for a few hours trying to make me feel better. Moms brought me to a psychiatrist, Dr. Z, on Queens Boulevard the next day. I ain't want to talk to no damn shrink, but Moms insisted. My first day, I didn't speak much. I ran through his glass bowl of candy every appointment. We spoke about my sickle cell pain and he tried to convince me that all would be well. Yeah, whatever. I tried 4 appointments and told my moms it wasn't worth the money. I wasn't planning on following through with my suicide anyway. I'd rather live. I was glad that I didn't have to go back to that shrink's office because I didn't like people in my business. Never did, never will. This book is a damn miracle. I never thought that I would be writing my life story, but once I started getting it all down, I realized it could help inspire others to do great things with their own lives. So here it is. I'm sharing, damn it. Towards the end of that summer, a bunch of my friends from my block were talking about what high school they wanted to go to in September. Most of them were saying the High School of Art and Design. Some of them were saying John Bowne. Art and Design was a prestigious art school in Manhattan. They said in order to get in, we would have to take an art test and bring a portfolio showcasing our artwork. I bought white t-shirts and airbrush paint and made my own version of the Graffiti Crew, the Shirt Kings, airbrush t-shirts with Louis Vuitton and Gucci logos for my portfolio. I figured that the white people at the school had never seen anything like that before and would be impressed. It was worth a try. I really didn't give a fuck about school. I already made my mind up to be a rapper. I just wanted to be with my homies from Left Rack. Little did I know, I wouldn't even be hanging with them anymore. I was about to meet a whole new set of friends with whom I would change the course of the world. Chapter 2. Poetical Prophets. The first day of high school is one of the most important days of a teenager's life. I spent the entire summer of 1989 getting prepared. I'm 15 years old now, so I have to step it up. The hottest gear out was Fila, Nautica, Polo, Benetton, and Banana Republic, plus Guess and Jabro jeans. I did a jukes, a robbery, with my boy Stobo to get the money. I had it all. My idea for the imitation Shirt King shirts worked. I was accepted into art and design. The school had students from every borough. I thought my grandma's school had some bad girls. Art and design was a gold mine of dimes. The first few days, I didn't see anybody from Left Rack, but I made a new friend, Derek from the Bronx, in my photography class. His mother worked for the radio station WBLS, and he had a lot of information about the music industry. We sat at the same lunch table every day. Lunch was where it all went down. People at one table in a rap cipher, a kid Terrence giving $5 haircuts, drugs and guns being sold in the bathroom, and random robberies taking place all over. Lunch was like the yard in prison. Around that time, I was shopping my first demo for a record deal. My mother was my manager since she knew the ropes of the business. I was going by the name Lord T, the Golden Child, after Eddie Murphy's movie, The Golden Child. After shopping at a few companies throughout the summer, we inked a demo deal with Jive Records, just as school started in September. Jive agreed to pay for my studio time. If I came up with enough good songs, they'd offer me a real contract. It was like a trial. Even though it was almost nothing, it felt like something to me. It was a start. I flirted with the women at Jive, and one of them, Kim, a good-looking, heavy-set black woman, got me on the soundtrack for a movie coming out that summer called Boys in the Hood. They let me open up the song Too Young by R&B group High Five with 16 bars. After that first break, Jive wanted to sign me up for a real contract. At school the next day, I told Derek about the deal. "You should meet my man Havoc. he said as we dipped photos in a solution in the darkroom during photography class. He's a rapper too. You should partner up because y'all both the same height and have a similar style. After school, I waited outside for Derek to introduce me to Havoc. A crowd of people came running out the front door. A short kid about my height was getting ready to fight a taller dude. Derek walked up. "That's Havoc right there about to fight," he said. The tall kid pulled out a knife and tried stabbing Havoc in his stomach, missing by inches. A few people in the crowd rushed over and took the knife. Havoc proceeded to beat the shit out of the dude. "Kiwi, Kiwi, Kiwi." The crowd chanted Havoc's nickname, lifting him up into the air and carrying him all the way to the train station. "Kiwi, Kiwi, Kiwi." I followed Derek and Havoc onto the train, and Derek introduced us. "Nice fighting," I told Havoc. "Did you see when he tried to stab me?" Hav asked. We rode to Queens Plaza, making small talk about Queensbridge and the music industry. We spit some verses back and forth as we walked to Ravenswood, where Hav's grandmother lived. I told him how ironic it was that my nana lived in Ravenswood too. He told me how this rapper from Queensbridge named Tragedy was his mentor and gave him his name, Havoc. I told him about my situation at Jive and that I was going to try to include him in the deal. The next day at school, Havoc snuck his way into our lunch period. "Yo, Hav and I going to Jive after school," I told Derek. "You should come." Before my next class, I went to the bathroom wearing a bunch of new bracelets and rings looking like Slick Rick. A dude followed me into the bathroom. This nigga scheming? I sensed that right away. He had some big rings on himself. One with a big Scorpio symbol stood out because that's my birth sign. I felt his eyes on my jewelry. Nothing happened, but after that, I bought a 22 Dillinger with a pearl handle and a bunch of bullets from this kid selling guns in the school cafeteria. I admired Slick Rick for his jewelry and how he shot his cousin who tried to rob him. I thought to myself, I'm going out like Slick Rick. Later that day, I arrived at Jive before Havoc. I was really feeling the idea of us being partners and decided that if they wanted to sign me, they were going to have to sign Hav too. I sat down with the A&R. "Look, I got a partner now, and things have changed," I told him. He responded that Jive just wanted to sign me. They weren't interested in my partner. Hav showed up and spit for the A&R, but the guy didn't change his mind. So I turned down the deal and never came back. My mom was upset, but ultimately let me do what I wanted. They kept me on the Boys in the Hood soundtrack, so it wasn't a total loss. Havoc, Derek, and I hung out together every day. Havoc had his lunch period switched so we can kick it even more. I started going to Ravenswood with Hav after school to work on song ideas. I met his younger brother, TJ, and their cousin, Todd. Todd was a real smart kid when it came to school. He was also into photography. So he told Hav and me that he would take some demo pictures for us. Hav started bringing me 3 blocks over to Queensbridge Projects to hang out with his friends. He bugged out when I told him I used to be in QB every day because my mom's worked for housing. It had been years since I've been to QB. And who's the first person I saw? The kid who had me up against the wall for talking to his girl. His name was Deaky, a.k.a. Nice. And he's one of Hav's boys. He didn't even remember me. I also saw some of my old friends from Reed's Day Camp. They remembered me right away. Havoc, his boys, my old friends, and I sat on the benches on Hav Block and reminisced about old times while drinking 40 ounces. There was a party going down later that night in the projects. The energy at the block party behind Reed Center that night was intense. Ice grills, screw faces, weed smoke, and hard liquor. Party was in a park, enclosed by a tall black steel gate with sharp tips on it, with only one way in and one way out. Everybody was standing around trying to look tough, smoking, drinking, bobbing our heads to the music. Something was going to pop off at any moment. About an hour into the party, it did. This rapper from QB, who was unknown at the time, named Nasty Nas, had a younger brother named Jungle. Jungle got into an argument with somebody and gunshots started flying. Everybody ran to the exit or hit the deck. Hav and I and the two chicks we were with ran and hopped the gate. My pants got hooked on one of the sharp tips. I was hanging upside down, yelling for Hav to get me off the gate while shots were flying. Hav and one of the chicks, Jessica, darted back, and by the time they ripped me down, my jeans were shredded, torn open like those NBA pants with the buttons down the sides. If Jessica's reading this, I know she's dying laughing right now. That was my first Queensbridge block party, and the first time that I had bullets whizzing around me. I guess you could say I was hooked on QB from then on. Hav and I bonded real quickly and decided that music was more important to us than school. We went to school just to check in for homeroom attendance, met in the cafeteria, and cut out after lunch. Most of the time, we'd jump out of the lunchroom window since it was on the first floor. Sometimes we'd linger by the front door and run when the security guard wasn't looking. A lot of times, we go to school just to rob people for their clothes, money, Walkman, train and bus passes, and anything else worth taking. One Thursday, Havoc and I cut out of school to meet two girls at his grandmother's crib in Ravenswood. When we got there, Hav's brother TJ and their three friends from Queensbridge, the twins and Nitty, were already at the crib cutting school as well. The twins, Nitty and TJ, who were all a few years younger than Havoc and I, said they were on their way to catch some juxes. Hav pulled out a small fruit cup snack from out the freezer. "Yo, check this out, Pete," he said. "You gotta get them nice and cold, then pour a little on Shorty's clit and lick it off. They go crazy, son, I'm telling you." Yeah, that nigga Hav's a freak. I had never given a girl head before, but that cold fruit cup thing had me ready to try it. The girls came through and we went into different rooms for privacy. Nothing happened with me and the girl I was with. Then TJ and the twins came back sweaty and out of breath with a mini-colored TV and other electronics. The guy they robbed had started shooting at them. One of the twins was shot in the leg and went back to QB for help. When Havoc finished up with his shorty, we walked the girls to the train and then I went home. I took an instant liking to Havoc and his boys because they were into the same criminal risk-taking that I was into. I was sort of living a double life, taking the bus and train to school during the week to make my moms happy, then on the weekends, going to parties, having sex, drinking, using all kinds of drugs, and doing stick-ups. We'd rob anybody that looked flashy, even people who didn't. Most of the time, the non-flashy ones were the ones with the money. In Queensbridge, we would have knockout contests to see who could knock out a crackhead with one punch. We hung out on the walkway on the 59th Street Bridge and robbed people who walked and rode their bikes across, beat up cab drivers for their money, and whatever wasn't cash, we took to the pawn shops on Sufton Boulevard in Jamaica. When the money ran out, I was right back to being broke, robbing people for petty shit. At school one afternoon, I saw this new kid with a dope gray hooded polo jacket with polo and big blue letters across the chest. So Hav, Derek, and I followed him to the train station after school. I jumped in front of him and threw a wild punch when instead of hitting his jaw, I hit his forehead and broke my hand. It probably hurt me more than it hurt the kid. I fell back while Havoc and Derek robbed him. My Uncle Lenny had just gotten his hands on a $10 million brownstone on 92nd Street and 8th Avenue in Manhattan. Uncle Lenny had a lot of mafia connections and said somebody owed him a favor, so they let him live there for a few years. My grandmother never trusted Lenny. She told me, "If you let Lenny in your house, he'll leave with your TV and you won't even realize it." Lenny taught me a lot about street shit. He knew how to manipulate and use people. He taught me the mental part of the game. My pops taught me the physical. I hope he doesn't get upset with me for sharing this, but my Uncle Lenny is gay. He doesn't show it at all. There's no reason you should treat a person foul because they're gay. After I broke my hand on that kid's forehead, Havoc and I took the train to Uncle Lenny's brownstone. I showed my swollen hand to Lenny, and he told me it was broken. One of Lenny's friends stopped by while we were there, an older Italian man who was a retired boxer. He looked at my hand and confirmed that it was broken, or what's called a boxer's fracture. I saw a lot of tough mafia guys around Lenny, who I knew were his friends. Uncle Lenny told me that he managed gay bars all over New York City for the mafia. After checking out my hand, Lenny made Hav and me some pasta and we left. I took the train to Mom's job down by the World Trade Center. She had become a high-ranking employee at the New York City Housing Authority and no longer had to work in the projects. When I got to her office on Murray Street in Broadway, Mom's left early and took me to St. Vincent's Hospital. The doctor told me I had a hairline fracture and my pinky knuckle was out of the socket. A boxer's fracture, just like Uncle Lenny's friend had said. The doctor pulled my knuckle back into place, wrapped my hand in a small cast, and told me it would ache later in life. At school the next day, our boy Tafari from Coney Island took a photo of Havoc and me laughing about the situation in the lunchroom, my arm in a sling. It's a classic. Tafari knew this kid named Silver in Coney Island who had a small studio, and Havoc and I cut out of school every day and rode the D train for an hour from Manhattan to Silver's crib. In 1 month, we made like 50 songs at Silver's. I did a couple of robberies and got $20,000. Thinking back, I regret it. In time, I paid for every red cent I stole and for every person who got hurt along the way. Karma is very real. Anyway, I got the bread, and at the Coliseum Mall next to Jamaica Avenue, I bought Havoc a big gold link and a Married Mother of God pendant with a big ruby in it. Hav was happy. I bought myself a thick herringbone chain with the biggest Nefertiti piece that they had, plus 3 gold rings. Hav told me about the Steinway Street shopping area in Astoria, so we went on a shopping spree, spending about $700 on clothes and sneakers. My 15th birthday had just passed, so I decided it was time to start driving. At a used car lot on Hillside Avenue in Jamaica, Queens, I bought my first car for $9,000 cash, a Sterling luxury car imported from England. I was 15 with no license, insurance, nothing. But the used car dealer was so grimy and happy that I had cash, he gave me a temporary registration and said to come back when it expired and he'd give me a new one. I was the littlest motherfucker with big jewelry, the flyest clothes, and a nice car. Since I didn't have a license and looked so young, I had tints put on the windows and mostly drove it at night or on the weekends I spent at Grandma's crib. Back then, people were still walking around with beepers on their hips. And if you were lucky enough to have a cell phone, which was damn near unheard of, it was big and doofy. Car washes sold fake plastic car phones with antennas to stick on your windshield. I bought one and pretended like I was on the phone when I drive past girls. Don't laugh, I got a lot of girls with that trick. I'd park a couple of blocks away or around the corner from my crib so my moms and grandmoms didn't know I had a car. $9,000 was stashed, left untouched. Almost all the biggest rappers talk about how they was getting money since back in the day, but I guarantee you, none of them was doing what I was doing at 14 and 15. Anybody who knew me from back then can vouch for me. One Saturday, Havoc came to my grandma's dance school. "Is it like this every Saturday?" Havoc asked me. He was open and bagged a few girls from there. "I've got to start coming here more often." That weekend, I found out that cousin Craig had got locked up again. Somehow he'd been shot in the foot, and they locked him up right after that. Havoc and Stobo spent the weekend at my grandma's crib in Hempstead. We drove uptown, bought some weed from the patty shop by the Polo Grounds projects, stopped at Willie's Burgers on 145th, and then jetted back to Long Island, where I introduced Havoc, Carrie, Money No, Dirty Harry, and some of my other friends. Later that night, we went to White Castle, the after-hours hangout in Hempstead. It had just started raining, and Hav asked me if he could drive my car around the block. We were drunk and high, so even though I knew Hav never driven a car before, I let him. This kid Kevin, who lived around the corner from me, went with him just in case. I watched Hav circle around one time, and then another, and then he hit the gas too hard when he tried pulling back into the parking lot and almost drove into White Castle. Luckily, he ran over a fire hydrant instead. My car was stuck on top of the hydrant. When I snapped out of shock, 6 of us pushed the car off the hydrant and hurried up out of there before the cops came. My brand new imported Sterling sputtered like a moped. "I'm sorry, son," Hav kept saying. "I'm gonna pay for it, don't worry." I didn't care, because I didn't have to work hard to get that car anyway. We laughed it off. Although it wasn't nothing funny about it, I had the car for 2 weeks and was already back to riding the Iron Horse. If you don't know, that's the train. 2 weeks later, I got my car back from the repair shop, but it never really drove the same. Hav and I came up with a name for our group, the Poetical Prophets. Around that same time, my man Carrie called and gave me my new name, Prodigy. As soon as I heard it, I was like, that's it, that's me, I'm running with that. Hav's cousin Todd took our photos. My brother Greg had a new camera he was proud of, so he took some pictures of us too. Hav agreed to let my moms be our manager, and we were ready. We had pictures, a manager, and a 50-song demo. We kept cutting school, except now we were walking the record labels all over Manhattan, hoping to be heard. We looked on the back of rap albums, got the office address to labels, and stood outside until we saw rappers coming and going. Def Jam was our first pick. While waiting by the front door, this rap group, the Afros, walked out. I approached them with my Walkman and asked them to listen to the music. "Ain't got time for that, shorty," they said, and kept walking. Fuck them niggas. One afternoon, we saw Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest by the office on Elizabeth Street in Houston. He was cool. He stopped, put our headphones on, and gave one of our songs a listen. It was 1989, and there were no young rappers with lyrical content like ours. Hav and I made graphic, reality-based hood music. There was nothing like us at that time. We had Q-Tip open. "Yo, I'm gonna take you inside and introduce you to some people," he said. He brought us inside Def Jam on the spot and introduced us to the entire office. He was the first person in the industry to recognize our talent and give us a chance. Q-Tip even helped us set up a meeting with Russell Simmons and Leo Cohen, the president and owner of the label. We were excited. We felt like that was our past. We were coming to Def Jam every day now. The next day, we went to school and stayed the entire day. We hadn't spent a whole day of school in like 4 months. There were signs on the bulletin board for a school talent show. You know we signed up. We only liked school because of the girls and robbing students for their goods. Plus, that's where our friends were at. We got drunk and high right before class mostly every day when we actually stayed. We were terrors in that school. We did a lot of things I can't discuss because it would incriminate us. But we ran through that school like we owned it. Hav and I were pissy drunk at talent show practice one day, drinking 40s of Ballantine Ale and OE. Hav was more bent than me. He told me how he and our boy from school, Derek, were planning to set me up and rob me when Derek first introduced us. But they ended up feeling my style, so they changed their minds. Wow, crazy. I guess the truth does come out when you're drunk. After the rehearsal, somebody in the crowd of 10 people started clapping and making a lot of noise for our song, "Aw, shit." When I got a good look, to my surprise, it was my pops. I was happy as hell to see him, and Hav was too. Pops told me Grandma's was letting them hide out at her new condo on Roosevelt Island, right across the water from our school. My pops, man, it felt real good to see him. I was excited about my new career as a rapper and told my pops we had a meeting with Russell Simmons in a couple of days. He was happy for us. We walked around Manhattan for a few hours and rode the tram by 59th Street Bridge to my grandmother's luxury condo on Roosevelt Island. We talked mostly about music, but he asked me about my health and explained that he was on the run again for guns and drugs. "I gotta be careful about how I move around," he said. Pops told me that since he'd been staying at Grandma's spot, he'd see me more often. Cool. I was happy to see my pops. I ain't seen him in a long time. I rode back from the island alone and went home. A couple of days later, it was meeting time. We changed DJs from Tafari to Hav's man Prince AD from Queensbridge. Tafari was like 6'1", and Prince AD was real little like us. He fit in. We were scheduled to meet Russell Simmons at his Manhattan condo around the block from Def Jam. I always kept my gun on me, but I didn't want to disrespect Russell by bringing that type of energy into his home. So this kid Perry at Def Jam let me leave it in his office drawer until we were done. Perry walked us to Russell's apartment on Broadway near NYU. Russell's assistant let us in. There was a big-ass jacuzzi tub in the floor in the room next to the living room. The white carpet had just been shampooed, and we had to take our shoes off and step in the soapy, stinking carpet in wet socks. Oh, so this is what it's like to have $1 million in your own record label. Nervous and excited, we waited around for 15 minutes until the assistant said Russell wasn't going to be able to make it. He sent us back to the office to meet with Leo Cohen instead. Leo listened to our best songs and told us that we cursed too much, and our music was too violent. He said Def Jam couldn't do anything with us because we were too young to speak like that. He said they would get in trouble with the law for putting out our album. What? We couldn't believe it. We were pissed off, but we weren't that mad because we knew we had some hot shit. If they didn't sign us, it was their loss, not ours. Although a month later, they signed the group Onyx from Jamaica, Queens. These niggas was screaming, cussing, and waving Tech 9s in the videos, looking like black skinheads. As we were leaving Def Jam, I went to get my gun from Perry's office. We walked in behind him, and Perry passed it to Hav instead of me. I asked him for some De La Soul and Slick Rick posters I seen lying around, and he went to get them. Hav pointed the gun at me, playing around. "You don't play with me like that, man," I told him. When our friend came back with the posters, Hav pointed the gun at him. "Nigga, give me them posters," Hav said, joking. The gun went off, hitting Perry in the stomach. His shirt catching fire with a bullet hit as he fell onto me. Hav dropped the gun and ran out the building with Prince A.D. right behind him. Yo, this nigga just shot this motherfucker. I looked down at Perry as he tried to grab onto my shoulder. Yo, get off of me. I yanked my arm away from him. I'm going with my people. I ran downstairs to catch up with Hav and A.D. The most popular duo in rap, Run DMC, was walking into the building as Hav, Prince A.D. and I came running out. My boys knocked them to the ground as they busted out the front door and ran up Houston towards Broadway to the train station. I wasn't far behind. Stop those kids! Somebody screamed behind us. When I looked back, it was Ali Shaheed Muhammad, the DJ from A Tribe Called Quest. Havoc stopped running and started screaming at me. Yo, I didn't mean it, son. I didn't mean to shoot him. You gotta hide me, son. Take me to Florida. I saw some detectives riding past us in an unmarked car and told Hav to be quiet. The 3Ds got out the car and came over to us. Is there a problem? One of the officers asked. Havoc started screaming again. I didn't mean to shoot him. It was an accident, man. The Ds pulled out cuffs and put them on Hav. Ali Shaheed Muhammad caught up with us and told the cops what happened. I told them that it was an accident. We thought it was a lighter. We found it outside. We didn't know it was a real gun. They took Hav to the bookings. Prince A.D. and I went home. The next morning, Moms woke me up for school. She had the radio on Kiss FM as usual. While we were both getting dressed, they announced that some rappers got into an argument with Leo Cohen at Def Jam over contracts, and one of the rappers, Keywan Muchita, shot an A&R because they didn't sign us. What? I explained the real story to my moms. I have to go see the dude in the hospital to make sure he's okay and to make sure he knows how it went down, I said. I felt bad because we had just met the kid through Q-Tip. Perry showed us love, helping us get inside Def Jam instead of us having to stand outside like groupies. But my main focus was getting Perry to agree to tell the story to help Hav get out of trouble. My mom said she'd come with me. So after school, we went to see him. My mother felt more badly for him than I did. Dude was messed up bad. The bullets were covered in green mold, causing an infection in his intestines. They had to take them out and let them heal outside of his body so the infection wouldn't spread. They attached a shit bag to his body while his intestines healed. Listen, I'm here for a reason, I said, sitting beside his bed. This is what you gotta say so Javi doesn't have to go to jail. We found it outside the office. We thought it was a lighter. We didn't realize it was a gun. Say, yeah, that's true. I was there when they found it and they thought it was a lighter. Perry was our man, so he knew it was just an accident. Hav beat the charges in court. After that, Def Jam got security guards. Big muscle-bound dudes at the front door. Wow, we were setting trends in the game already. When my 16th birthday came around, my moms bought me the autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley, the same guy who wrote Roots. I never had the patience to read a 500-page book before. But after the first 50 pages, I realized that Malcolm X was a street dude before he became a great speaker and leader. Plus, Malcolm was once a part of the Nation of Islam, and I wanted to learn more about the 120 lessons of Islam. It took me 2 weeks to read, open my eyes, and planted the seed in my brain. I still had a lot to learn, but I felt a change in my mentality coming, a drastic change. Havoc and I started recording at this new spot, 510 Studios, on South Franklin in Hempstead. Paul, the guy who ran it, and his partner Kerwin, the in-house engineer. Both made beats and had a similar style to Public Enemy's producer, Hank Shockley. Paul and Kerwin loved our style and wanted to produce a whole album for us, so we got to use the studio all the time. A lot of big names in rap music come from Long Island. Rakim, Biz Markie, EPMD, De La Soul, Public Enemy, Method Man, Busta Rhymes, and myself. I was proud to represent Hempstead, but I'm glad my moms got me out of there and moved to Queens because I was exposed to a different way of living. The first 16 years of my life were incredible, but the next 16 would be nothing short of history book material. October 10th, 2008, Mid-State Correctional Facility, Marcy, New York, 8 a.m. The dorm I was in at Mid-State Correctional Facility held 30 inmates from all walks of life: ex-cops, judges, DAs, school superintendents, COs, a couple of Bloods, and a multi-millionaire who ran Tyco and had an ownership stake in the Yankees and the Yankees Entertainment Station network. A real motley crew, mostly white men in their late 40s. My homeboy Young, one of the few inmates I was close with, was 22 and serving 5 years for criminal enterprise. We laugh about how almost all the white inmates in our dorm had to take psychiatric medication because they couldn't deal with the reality of being in prison. They actually believed that they didn't belong here or should have received lighter sentences or gotten away with their crimes completely, that they were too good to be serving time because of their upbringing, academic background, or resumes. It was hilarious to sit back and analyze them. It made me appreciate being raised on both sides of the tracks. I know what it's like to live in the hood with poverty and in the suburbs with money. So I'm comfortable amongst savage street mentalities and highbrow squares. I prefer a savage mind over a square one, because without money, expensive houses and safe neighborhoods, cars, and the other materialism that gives a false sense of security in their little fake-ass world, a square couldn't survive in the real world, with poverty and savages a king. Just imagine for a moment the apocalypse hits. Armageddon, Babylon, the corporate world is falling. No electricity, bank accounts, gas stations, no calling 911 because there's no phone service. Who will survive longer, if at all? Mr. and Mrs. Square-ass lame with their master's degrees and their Prada suits? Or Mr. and Mrs. Savage mentality who are used to having nothing and are close friends with all the neighborhood criminals? I suggest you read the book of Revelations if you're confused about the answer. Having a savage mentality doesn't necessarily make you an evil person. It just means that you have a set of survival skills that can be used if needed. There are a lot of people who use it in a negative way. I used to be one of them. But while serving these 3 years in prison, I practiced keeping a very peaceful state of mind. For those of you who can relate, once you master that level of self-control, you'll notice your life start to drastically improve. It will help you avoid a world of unnecessary trouble. I wish I could have learned this on the streets at 16 instead of in prison at 33, but my life didn't play out that way. In late January 1990, right after the New Year rolled around, my mother woke me up to go to school at 6:40 a.m. I don't know what got into me that morning. I'm not going to school no more, I told my mom flat out. She thought I was just talking in my sleep and tried to get me up again 5 minutes later. I'm not going to school no more, I told her again. I'm going back to sleep. Okay, Mom said, and left for work. That was that. I did eventually go to school again, but it wasn't to go inside. I park out front and kick it with the females at Art and Design, then do the same at the all-girls Catholic school down the street called Cathedral. The Cathedral girls walked past our school to get to the train station in their miniskirt uniforms. When I eventually succeeded at getting the Cathedral girl, it was like a dream come true. Her name was Jade, a real pretty 17-year-old dark-skinned dime with green chinky eyes from Harlem, whose parents owned a brownstone by Convent Ave. After a week, I had her cut in school to take rides in the Sterling, park, smoke weed, and get busy in the back seat. She was the first girl who would just pull her panties to the side so we could do it with her outfit on. After 3 or 4 episodes with Jade, her phone number was changed. I never went back to Cathedral or art and design after that. Not even the school girls. After Jade, I was on a mission. All I wanted was sex with the finest dimes. Chapter 3. Mobb Deep. Try to keep a positive mind and walk a straight line don't work. So niggas is forced to do dirt. And God made dirt, so this dirt won't hurt. Shook Ones, Part 1. 1991. Havoc and I decided to change our name from Poetical Prophets to Mobb Deep. We needed something that described how we were living. When all the QB niggas got together to hang out, it would be like 30 to 40 of us, like a mob. The slang we used when we saw a whole bunch of guys together was, "Yo, them niggas is deep." Both words together sounded good. Mobb Deep. I decided to use 2 B's because it just looked better with the extra B. It made it look even. I was a high school dropout, full-time rapper, stick-up kid. It wasn't long before Havoc dropped out too. I was still doing my grand larceny thing, sold my Sterling for $3,000 and bought my second car, a used Acura Legend, from the same car lot on Hillside Avenue. I paid $9,000 cash, of course. Then took it to Earl Scheib on Peninsula Boulevard in Hempstead and got it painted money green. At Big Boy Toys on Queens Boulevard, they put in white seats with money green piping, a white dashboard, a Momo steering wheel, and green window tints. To top it off, I put hammers on it. Those is rims. I was 16 with the illest car. I was on a rampage. My daily schedule was to buy a bunch of weed uptown, then drive around every borough bagging broads. My man Dirty Harry, who lived around the corner in Hempstead, bought a BMW 5 Series, burgundy, with gold trimming, 5-star gold rims, and a burgundy rag top. We used to stare at that car outside the used car lot on Jamaica Avenue. "I'm buying that shit," Harry would say. And he damn sure did. Carrie was my closest friend from Hempstead. He lived on the corner of my block, and we'd known each other since diapers. My father used to date his moms way back in the day, so Carrie and I were like brothers. I stashed all my dirty money at his crib, $30,000 to $40,000. You know that's your homie when you could trust him with that much dough. Dirty Harry had a friend named Money No. Money No would thug him out for the new car Harry just bought. That's borrow it and bring it back when he felt like it. Money No and I ended up getting real cool. Carrie and Money No had some old beef with each other and would fist fight constantly, so I couldn't even chill with both of them at the same time. Maybe it was because Money No father also used to date Carrie moms. But every Tuesday night, we'd hang out at the Rink, a popular roller skating rink in Teaneck, New Jersey. Man, that was the spot. We'd race the Beamer and the Acura from Hempstead to Teaneck in 15 minutes flat. Havoc, Prince A.D., Hav's brother TJ, and sometimes Carrie would ride in my Acura, and Money No had his crew in the BMW. Even if we didn't go inside the rink, the parking lot across the street was a party in itself, packed with females and niggas in their prized possession, their cars. Dudes walked around the lot selling drugs and temporary licenses for $100. I bought like 3 of those. Inside, the rink was filled with females from all over the tri-state. Everybody who was anybody was there every Tuesday. It was smaller and more exclusive than the popular skate key rink in the Bronx. You had to be in the know. I bumped into one of Hav's boys from QB, Yammy, a few times, and we got real cool. He was a drug dealer and a Golden Gloves boxer from Brownsville, Brooklyn, who moved to Queensbridge. Yammy was famous in the streets of New York, an official ghetto superstar. DJ Clark Kent would pass by us in the rink and in the parking lot with our cars and jewelry and say, "You little niggas gonna blow up one day." He didn't even know we was rappers. He just saw how expensive we looked. Most of the sex I was having at 16 came from hanging out at the roller rink and a small spot in Harlem called Ebony Lounge that had an older, well-dressed crowd with some good-looking females and minks and foxes. Derek's homeboy from the Bronx, DJ Damage, played there. We were the youngest in the 21 and over spot with our fake IDs, big jewelry, and nice cars. The ladies were all over me, taking turns pinching my butt as I walked through the crowd. Harlem girls got a lot of style, and I wasn't shy about approaching an older woman. We always arrived dressed fresh, Pele leather jackets and all sorts of colors and patterns, a different one for every night. The older dudes in the spot wanted to kill us, rob us, and both, because we were taking their ladies. But we never had fear in our hearts. We would party anywhere, and we always had guns, so we didn't give a fuck. I had guns galore, and I kept buying new ones, adding to my collection, different ones for different occasions. Little ones to sneak into parties, and big ones in the engine of my Acura for crews that like jumping people outside of parties. We were very well protected from anything that might pop off. At Ebony Lounge one night, this older female named Tanya, around 26, and wearing a gray mint coat, started buying me Amaretto sours and other sweet drinks I never heard of. She was a nurse from the Bronx who worked at a hospital on the Grand Concourse by Fordham Road, a few blocks from Derek's crib. She was in love with me. Some nigga Tanya used to mess with would come to the spot every week with his friends to stalk her. I was grinding up on Tanya while she was sucking on my ear in front of the dude to let him know what time it was. Later on, posted up on the wall next to the DJ table with Derek and Money No, I saw the guy at the bar arguing with Tanya. Then he stormed out. "I think you should leave." Tanya came over to warn me. "He's talking about robbing y'all when y'all go outside." Ha! We laughed and kept partying. When we walked out the spot, the dude and 6 of his friends were standing on the corner watching Money No and me say peace to our people before getting in my car parked across the street. I grabbed my gun from under the seat and stood outside my ride with it clearly in my hand. The dudes whispered and walked away. Clowns, I thought. Dude's mad cause a little nigga took his chick. Tough shit. Money No and I bounced to the Bronx to meet Tanya and her sister at her crib. Sitting on the couch in their living room, Money No and I was smirking at each other as Tanya served us drinks cause the apartment was toe out from the floor up. But those big asses Tanya and her sister had made us not care. Money No went to her sister's room and Tanya started giving me head right there on the couch. After 30 minutes, her sister called Tanya into the bedroom and Money No came into the living room, telling me that her sister and Tanya both had their period, but still wanted to sex us. No thank you. I got caught my first time and it fucked me up for life. Never ever again. "Pete, look," Money No said, pointing at the floor as we sat on the couch. Gun in my pocket just in case. I didn't see anything. "You don't see all them roaches?" I looked again. There was hundreds of them. As we were inspecting the roach population, a rat ran across the room. "Oh, shit!" We both jumped on the couch screaming. We said our goodbyes real quick. Driving across the Triborough Bridge on the way back to Hempstead, a big roach crawled across the dashboard as if to say, "Sup, y'all?" We pulled over at the first exit, took our clothes off, and shook them out in the street, jumping around like idiots. That was the first and last time we went to Tanya's crib. We were having the time of our lives. Superstars before we were superstars. Money knows, and my favorite thing to do was drive to Philadelphia for the Greek festival. There was a lot of little niggas our age with money in Philly, riding around with four-wheelers, dirt bike motorcycles in the street and through the park. Thousands of young people partying in the park, showing off cars, motorcycles, clothes, and females showing off their bodies. Sweet. In late autumn, Kid Capri threw a big party in Manhattan's Upper West Side. Derek and his Bronx crew told me to meet them there, so I scooped Money No and headed to the city. I was wearing a brand new black and olive green butter soft Pele jacket with red trimming and a gold barrel link with a Lazarus piece. Looking real clean and ready to bag these older niggas' broads as always. The block was packed when we pulled up. We parked around the corner and walked over to where Derek and his crew was posted up across from the club entrance. Derek told me they couldn't get in. We didn't care. It was like a party outside, with females roaming around who couldn't get in either. One of Derek's boys kicked it with me about this gun I've been trying to convince him to sell me for 5 months. It was the illest gun I ever seen. Still is, to this day. An all-plastic Tech 22 with a 42-shot banana clip. He finally offered me some ridiculous price, like $800. It wasn't that hot. I had a .22 revolver in my pocket, so I wasn't pressed. Though the gun looked sweeter than a motherfucker, like a toy. On the walk back to the car, after 20 minutes, Money No and I passed some guys lighting off firecrackers. Is somebody shooting at us? I pulled my gun out of my pocket discreetly. It was the night before Halloween, chilly. Why are they still blasting fireworks? When I realized it was just firecrackers, I put the piece back as quick as I pulled it out. We stopped at the corner store for White Owl cigars and soda. As soon as I walked out the store, I was surrounded by squad cars pulling up from every angle. Freeze! Don't fucking move! Get the fuck on the ground! I complied with their demands. Damn, I'm going to jail, I thought. It wasn't hard to find a gun, right in my jacket pocket. Before they threw the cuffs on, I gave the car keys to Money No. They put me in the squad car and took me downtown. It was my first time getting locked up. I flashed back to when I was 8, in the backseat of the cop car holding my pop's cuffed hands. I dropped a few tears. I was only 16 and didn't know what was going to happen. I thought I was going to prison for a long time. At the station, they took my fingerprints, mug shots, and transported me to the Tombs. I spent the night in the Tombs in downtown Manhattan. A giant building with numerous courtrooms, including the Supreme Court, and in the basement, hundreds of prisoners. The Tombs stank, filled with bums and grimy New Yorkers. Whoever they arrested off the street, stuck in the holding cell together. It was every man for theyself in there. I didn't have any problems. I knew how to carry myself. I didn't sleep, paid attention. The cops kicked and slammed the door every couple of hours as they moved people in and out. Hours passed. The bullpen started to fill up, and this white man began kicking the steel door, yelling and screaming to be released. The kid I was smoking a cigarette with and I were laughing at the fool. The correction officers came in and told him to wait like everyone else, but he wouldn't shut up. "I've been in here for hours," he shouted. "When do I see the judge?" The COs took him into another room and beat him up while we listened to him scream some more. Moms and Uncle Lenny came to get me out the next morning. Since I was a youthful offender, I got out ROR, released on my own recognizances. My birthday was in 2 days. I was turning 17. I ended up getting 5 years probation and 150 hours community service at St. Peter's Church in Midtown Manhattan, right around the block from Art and Design. My grandpop's old jazz buddy, Reverend Genzel, wrote letters on my behalf to hook that up. During my daily 3 hours at St. Peter's, he'd tell me stories about playing jazz with my grandpops. The church served free food for homeless people with AIDS, so I helped set up tables and chairs and put them all away. My father left New York to hide out in California. He'd been on the run for like 4 years. After resolving his jewelry store robbery case, he caught another case when the cops pulled him over on the highway and found a couple of keys of cocaine and 2 Uzis in the trunk of his car. So he went on the run again. He made connections in Cali to change his identity, but he needed his mom's help. She couldn't send money or wire it through the bank because that would leave a paper trail. So grandmoms caught a flight to Los Angeles and took me along for the ride. It was winter recess at school, so my moms let me go. When we arrived in LA, Michael Peters came to pick us up from the airport. Michael was a famous dance choreographer who my grandmother raised and taught to dance. He made a big name for himself by creating the dance moves for Michael Jackson's Beat It and Thriller videos. He was proud to show my grandmother how well he was doing and brought us to his mansion in the Hollywood Hills. They drank and talked about old times at the dance school while I walked around Michael's living room, admiring the pictures on his walls of him smiling with celebrities. We checked into a hotel room at Universal Studios. When I was a kid, my grandmother took me to Universal Studios theme park right next to the hotel, where they showed us how they did special effects in movies. Even though I was older now, I still wanted to go. So Michael said he would take me while we were in town. Michael was gay as hell, but I grew up around a lot of gay dudes at my grandmother's dance school, so it didn't bother me. Mike was cool. He was like family. The next day, my grandmother and I met my pops at a grimy storefront on Malcolm X Boulevard in Compton to get the fraudulent identification. The fat dude behind the desk had a 12-gauge shotgun leaning up against the wall beside him. Pops and grandmas exchanged small talk with the dude for 15 minutes, like they had friends in common. Pops gave the guy a yellow envelope filled with $2,500. After the fat fuck counted it, he gave my Pops a bigger yellow envelope with his new paperwork. Pops opened it and checked it all out. A birth certificate, social security card, driver's license, and utility bills, all with his new name, Carlos Johnston. Back at the hotel, Pops told us he'd been living in San Jose. He'd met some broad out there and they were starting a new life together. Pops and I went to see Boys in the Hood that night near Marina Del Rey. It was opening weekend and shootouts and stabbings were erupting at theaters across the country. The theater was packed. We jumped out our seats when my song, Too Young, started playing during the backyard barbecue scene when Ice Cube came home from prison. He was proud that his son accomplished something like that. That was the last time I got to hang out with my Pops. 9 months later, the feds finally found him in San Jose. He had a good run though, 5 years. He did 2 years in a federal prison in California. Then they shipped him to a fed joint in Georgia for another few. Back in New York, I hung out in QB every day with Haz's friends. Jamel and Jamal were twins. You could tell them apart because Jamel had 2 razor scars on his cheeks, a long one on the right cheek and a short one on the left from a brief Rikers Island bid. Someone came up behind him with 2 razors and cut him on both sides. We called Jamal Twin Gambino and Jamel the Scarface twin. Then there were Ron Gotti, Ty Nitty, and Trip, who came to be known as Godfather. Karate Joe, who was a martial arts expert. Yami, the Golden Gloves boxer. Free High, who smoked everybody weed and never chipped in or bought his own. Capone, who had a reputation for supposedly shooting a cop and cutting people with razors. Draws, who he called Super Trooper because he survived numerous shootouts and had been shot multiple times. Rap and Spark, 2 older laid-back hustlers who didn't hang out with us much because they were wiser than us. Though when they did come around, they'd advise us to stop all our young-minded shit and just get money. Prince Guard, who always was just coming home from jail. Ops, aka Dead Arm, cause he knocked dudes out with one hit. And Tawan, they called him Noid, cause he looked like the Domino's pizza character, the Noid. He was the only one in the crew with his own apartment, no parents. He was the same age as Havoc and me, but was on his own because his moms reportedly got locked up for cutting off her man's finger and left him with the crib. That was the hangout spot. We called it the Honeycomb Hideout. Noid had another nickname, the Natural Born Hustler. He had to pay the bills and support himself. He moved to QB 5 years prior from Red Hook Projects in Brooklyn. He didn't speak to me much and wasn't friendly at first, but I was a new face, so I didn't expect him to be. I'm that same way with people. The twins were also hard on me when I first came around. They told me if I wanted to be down with their crew, I had to battle every rapper in Queensbridge. So we got some E&J and weed, and we walked around the entire projects, and I had to battle whoever was outside who had a name. I was getting busy. The twins would amp me up. Yeah, this my nigga P. Y'all can't fuck with his verses. Finally, they told me I had to battle Nas. It was around 10 p.m. on a Friday night. We were all drinking outside in front of Havoc's building. Come on, let's go see if Nas is over on the block, Twin Gambino said. Nas, Jungle, and Grand Wiz sat on the same bench on 40th side of Vernon every night. That was their bench. Havoc's and Nas's blocks were on opposite ends of the projects. You had to cross a hill in order to get to the other side. You could go through the blocks, but most people crossed the hill. The two sides, the 40th and the 41st sides, beefed with each other sometimes. Nas and them was sitting on the bench as usual. Yo, I got my man P right here. He wanna battle you, Gambino said. Nas was nonchalant, like, alright, corny little dude. Who does this kid think he is coming around to battle me? That's Nas. Everybody knew how nice he was back then. I had a little lick in me, so I was feeling myself. It was time to battle Nas. The twins and I stood next to Nas and two of his boys on the bench. I was nervous as hell. I spit, Nas spit, then I spit some more. We lit a blunt and passed it around between raps. When I heard Nas rhyme, I thought, damn, I can't say no shit better than that. His is way better than mine. He told me my shit sounded cool, and his boy said the same. I knew Nas had the better rap, but the twins always encouraged me. You the best, P. You the best. Nas was the best. Havoc was better than me, too. We shook hands, then the twins and I walked back over the Hav's block on the 41st side. You doing your thing, P, but there's one more person you gotta battle, they said. If he says you good, then you good. Who is he? I asked. Where's he at? You gotta wait. He's locked up right now. His name is called Mega. If you can hang with Mega, then you can hang with us. Everybody in the hood said that Mega was 100 times better than Nas, and Nas was fucking good. They had me scared to death to battle Mega. Mega was supposedly locked up for a crime he didn't even commit. Some white chick had been mugged and pointed Mega out while she was sitting in the back seat of a cop car and he was minding his business. He got 5 years for that bullshit. I was 17 years old in 1992, but in my heart and my mind, I was more like 25. I moved out my mom's apartment and practically lived at Hav's mom's crib with him, his brother TJ, his sister Tamika, his mom's, and her boyfriend. Once I got a taste of the largest housing projects in North America and became a part of the action, it was addictive. 6 blocks, 96 buildings. Every block had a crew. Hav's crew was the 12th Street crew, from the 41st side of 12th Street. Mostly everybody sold crack and had money rolls in their pockets. The excitement of QB hooked a lot of people in with its new slang, unique style of dress, and cool characters. Queensbridge had its own way of doing things. We cuffed the bottom of our pants different. laced our shoes different, even tied them different, looping the laces through every other hole. People get sucked into that hood. They say New York is fast-paced. Well, QB is triple that speed, mentally. We had to think fast, react fast, and have animal instincts in order to survive in that hood. Crackheads from different states and countries would find their way to Queensbridge because in QB, they sold big, loose rocks in their hands instead of a bunch of tiny pieces stuffed in a crack valve like other hoods. We called crack Hemies, cigarettes bogies, and St. Ives malt liquor Thaney. The word Thaney came from our own cryptic speech, something like pig Latin. This kid Bumpy started it, and I dubbed it the Thun language. For example, instead of calling each other son, we said Thun, and Thordy instead of Shorty. It got real intricate. Bumpy had a speech impediment that made him talk like that naturally, but we all turned it into our hood slang. We even had slang terms for money. A $100 bill was called a man. 50s were half a man. 20s, dubs. 10s, demons. And a 5 was a fever. We called the police Jakes from the 80s TV show Jake and the Fat Man. And the phone was a jack. Jewelry was shine or special effects. Oral sex was called a headspin. And regular sex was a backspin. We were doing and saying shit nobody had ever seen or heard before. One afternoon, Twin Gambino knocked on the door and told me Cormega was home and it was time for us to battle. I reluctantly got up and followed him outside to the card table where Mega was posted up on a set of crutches. I introduced myself, and he explained how he'd broken his leg in a motorcycle accident as soon as he got home. After the small talk, we started rapping. Mega was definitely better than all of us. The way he put his rhymes together, his wordplay was extra unique. I was scared to rap after him, but I did. Mega said he liked my shit. I was in. I passed the test. Twin Gambino told me that after I battled Nas told everybody I sounded weak and corny and Havoc should go solo. I wasn't surprised. Even I thought I was whack compared to Nas. Although Gambino never made me feel that way. He told me that in his opinion, I could be better than him. Man, fuck Nas, Gambino said. Don't listen to him, he's just jealous. To me, Nas was the best there was. I never had any sour feelings towards Nas. I looked up to him. Gambino telling me that Nas said I was whack only fueled me. I grew to love Havoc, his family, his friends, and Queensbridge so much that I wasn't going to let anything make them turn around and say, P's whack, let's cut him off. From that day on, I went on a rap mission because I wanted to be accepted by my new friends. I didn't want Had to go solo. It sparked a fire in me. I would like to thank Nas, the Twins, Havoc, and the entire 12th Street crew for bringing me into y'all world. I love y'all. Chapter 4. Juvenile Hell. Buying new gear, nothing but the best. Forget Levi, strictly polo and Guess. But how do I make the cash? It gotta be easy and it gotta be fast. Peer pressure. Hav and I did a few talent shows and went to a lot of industry parties in 1992. Still trying to get signed after the Def Jam incident. Since we were so young and the smallest dudes at the parties, music industry people started to take notice. Matty C, a writer for the Source magazine's Unsigned Hype column, decided to feature us in the magazine. I bought like 20 copies when it hit the stand. Slick Rick was on the cover. I was amazed. We were in a magazine. Matty played our music for Bones Malone and A&R at 4th and Broadway Records. He wanted to sign us immediately and had a contract ready within a week with the $20,000 advance. We had a falling out with my moms just before we made the deal. We'd made it past the first few rounds of auditions at a New York talent search, and my mother had taken us to the main audition in the projects on the Lower East Side. When our song, "Aw Shit," came on, the dude in charge was like, "Stop the tape. You can't curse." We got into an argument, and they kicked us out the show. "Fuck you, fuck this show," we shouted. "You gonna remember us." My mother didn't curse. She was a real positive person, into new age thinking. "You can't talk to people like that," she said. "This is a business." "Moms, Mobb Deep is the best that there is in rap music," I said. "Guaranteed, we're better than anybody that's in that show." "You can't go around thinking and talking like that," Mom said. "Listen, if you don't think we're the best, you shouldn't be managing us," we told her. Moms was right. We shouldn't have cursed that dude out. But of course, we're supposed to feel like we're the best. Our new manager was this dude named Dave, a well-dressed, soft-spoken guy from Queens with a good business mentality. Havoc found him somewhere. Moms was pissed. She spoke to her friend Brenda Dash, a real authentic psychic, about it. "Just leave them alone. They're gonna learn on their own." Brenda, who's Damon and Stacey Dash's aunt, told her. She eventually listened to Brenda and fell back. Moms didn't think 4th and Broadway was a good deal, but we just wanted the dough and our videos on TV.